saunter on in. But and just fixing the little banners. Okie dokie. All right. Well, we actually already got a comment live chat from the incredible Mark McKeever saying that he will say he is more intrigued now than when Future State was first announced. He will pick and choose as prices are going up. Miss the days of hold the line at $2.99 back in the day.
Yeah, we all do.
It's so well. I don't know. Maybe that was a thing around the time the New 52 started, because I know when that happened, they also held the line at $3.99 for a cumulative 5 minutes. But the first time I heard anything about it like that was Rebirth. Rebirth was the big $2.99 thing. Was that also a like a running slogan prior to Rebirth?
Yeah, I mean, well, with the New 52, everything was at $2.99. Like they had some books that had creeped up, because across the street at Marvel, they had a lot, maybe half their books were $3.99 at the time. This was back 2011, and they committed. I remember being at San Diego Comic-Con in 2011. So July 2011, and the first Rebirth title, which was New 52 title, which was Justice League #1, came out the last week of August, and then all the rest of the #1 started coming out in September. So July was right there. They already knew everything that was happening, and there was a ton of panels about what the New 52 was going to be. And I remember being on the Meet the Publishers panel with Jim Lee and Dan Didio, and they were talking about how, yeah, we're committed to keeping everything at $2.99 for as long as we can. And it was like 3 or 4 years before you started seeing titles creep up to $3.99 like on a regular basis. Obviously, if it was an oversized or anniversary issue or what have you, it would be more. But for a long time, things were $2.99. It was great. Now we're looking at $4.99 for some of the regular books. So it's not. I'm not a fan. And adding 10 pages of a backup story that I don't even want to read, it doesn't constitute value for an extra $1 in my mind.
Right. And that sort of leads into what you're one of the things that we might end up talking about is the different formats that DC might be experimenting with, moving into the anthologies, which comes with a different price tag. But DC might be being a little bit more experimental with how the comic books are published and the format in which they're published, which hopefully might create some more incentive despite the price increase. So we'll have to see how that works out.
It also doesn't help that AT&T is just hemorrhaging out on the side of the street. So that, I'm sure, definitely factors into them trying to get us to chug out as much money as we possibly can, so that their little publishing arm can make its little bit of pennies to keep it afloat. So
yeah, that's what's so crazy about it. Like, I agree with you 100%. $155 billion in debt, and it's a lot of why they cut all the high profile editorial people that had been there forever. Like every corporation does. When times are tight, you're going to cut the people that make the most money, bring in new people, get rid of redundancies, consolidate roles. And that's also why you're seeing lesser talent at DC. And it's interesting because so many times you say, hey, we need new voices, we need more diversity, and we need creators that, that give them a shot, that come from different places. And DC seems to be doing that. But at the same time, it's like, is the quality going to be there? That you got to have names you can trust. And I'm fine with bringing in creators, and this is how the pipeline's gone in the last decade. I'd say you bring in creators that have at least done things on the independent side of things and have proven themselves. And then you bring them in to work on, at least they've got a body of work. DC's throwing some people in here, man, I've never heard of these people before. They've never written comics before. That's where I start to worry. And I think, well, the only reason some of these people are getting these high profile gigs, and we'll talk about it once we kind of go through the different titles, is because they were probably willing to work for a fraction of what other big names,
100%.
Where's Mark Waid? I guarantee you that Philip Kennedy Johnson's working for peanuts compared to what Mark Waid would have cost DC on Superman.
And I guarantee you he's less fussy than Mark Waid too.
Yep.
So there's that. I mean, we'll definitely be getting into everything. We'll just enter us up and I'll yell at everybody for a second. Before I do, big hello to our pal Joe's Geek Show out in Japan there. Thank you for joining in, my man. But welcome. It's been a long time coming to the 64th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and other co-hosts in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the marvelous storytelling medium that is comics, whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations. We hit it all this week. Of course, we had to come back with something pretty big. It's been a hot second since you've seen my ugly mug on the interwebs, and I had to grab two of the best on the interwebs to come and join me to make up for it. So, of course, we're joined by the one and only statesman of comic book podcasting, Jace from the Comic Source podcast. It's
Guys.
And I mean this wholeheartedly. It is so good to finally sit down and chat with you, man.
Yeah, it's been a long time, as you said, and I'm celebrating the holidays with my brown sugar bourbon and my Valiant. I don't know if you guys can see the embossed Valiant V.
Yes.
And also I'm rocking my Jarro shirt today.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah.
A Jarro shirt there. So yeah, I'm definitely in the mood to talk some DC comics. So great.
That's Scott Snyder's greatest contribution to the Justice League was Jarro.
Yeah, well, so I have a friend who works at a print shop, and he made these. And I had some made for Scott and his family too, when his youngest was born. So I took a couple of these like jersey style shirts, one for him, one for his wife, his two older kids, and then a onesie for the baby. And I have a picture of Scott's a friend, so it was great to see him at San Diego and give it to him, and he was like, oh my god, a Jarro onesie. So
That's awesome.
It's pretty awesome. But I agree with you. Scott's greatest creation, co-created with great artist Jorge Jimenez. Jarro, man, he always brings a smile to my face.
I feel like Jarro, they should have done like everything they did with the Batman Who Laughs. It should have just been Jarro. Like, honestly, it would have made it 10 times better. But of course, this would not be an episode of Let's Talk Comics without my usual partner in crime, the one and only Canadian comic book cultist and Cape Crusader, a man of many mantles, Comic Boom.
Wow. Good to be here. Good to be here, Dark Knight. It's nice to be back and with yourself and Jace, and let's talk some comics.
Hell yeah. So you guys obviously know what we're talking about. Big news has hit within the last week or so, just a trickling of announcements for what's actually going to be going on post Future State. I mean, everybody's been chomping at the chain for it. Everybody has had honestly no idea what the future beyond Future State looks like, and they've spent the week kind of trickling in what we're going to be getting in terms of creative teams, content, and a new sort of way for them to package the content. So obviously, I think we can all make the observation that DC's Infinite Frontier is clearly trying to rip on Darwin Cook's famed The New Frontier in a maybe a superficial way, just to grab cash. But there's definitely an element of that there. If you guys have looked at all of the promo imagery, there is I think a poorly aped, more modernized and contemporary version of Darwin Cook's massive splash cover for The New Frontier. And it is what it is. But I want to know from you guys first off, and we'll start with Comic Boom. What are your impressions of I was going to call it Infinite Future. So many different F's in here. But what are your impressions of Infinite Frontier based on what we're seeing? How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm hoping for the best. I really am. I've been so relentlessly almost a little depressed about the state of DC, and I was recently privileged enough to be interviewed by a Chase on his podcast, which might be coming out at some point, and we tried to, it was more of an uplifting podcast. We tried to be positive, and so I'm gonna really try to be positive on this. I think DC needs a boost, and this Infinite Frontier. You're absolutely right, Dark Knight. I immediately, when I saw the word Frontier, I thought of Darwin Cook. Honestly, looking at the imagery and everything else, some of it might harken back, but I don't really get the same. I don't get that feeling of New Frontier.
Yeah.
Infinite Frontier. It's very, very. Let's face it. They're combining what we all thought were the rejected ideas of Generations and Future State and Endless Winter. It's like they had this hodgepodge of ideas, and I think they're really trying to make the best out of all those ideas, and they're trying to make it a cohesive storyline, and that's what they're trying to do. And I'll give them credit that from a marketing perspective, they're at least they seem like they have some idea what they want to do moving forward, which I think is good. And we talk about the talent base that they have working on it, but I'm certainly going to give them a passing grade on the marketing thus far, and I do have some excitement about some of the titles we'll be talking about.
And I mean, Jace, I'm curious. Do you agree? Because I also agree with Comic Boom here. Is it just aping off of New Frontier in name only? Because as you can see, you know, this is one of the original art pieces to Darwin Cook's New Frontier. And if you were to look at some of the new promo images, particularly that big, it looks like a double page spread image, there's no doubt that to at least a certain degree, they are trying to evoke some level of excitement around this Infinite Frontier using, or really off of the back of the New Frontier. So what do you feel about it? Does it actually get you excited? Do you feel like it might legitimately, in a narrative way, harken back to the New Frontier, or are they digging themselves a shallow grave filled with potential money?
Well, so here's the thing, right? Like, I hope that Infinite Frontier as a concept, as an issue, as a creative product, is as good, is as successful an idea and in execution as this marketing idea is. Because when you think about it, I'll agree with Boom. It's a brilliant marketing idea, because yes, I mean, purely based on the fact, because I personally didn't even think about it until I heard one of you guys mention New Frontier. So until a few minutes ago, I wasn't thinking New Frontier at all. But just by the fact that somebody's making that link, that's good marketing, right? Because we all know New Frontier is a seminal work. What Darwin Cook did in New Frontier is, and Jimmy Palmiotti, who was a dear friend of Darwin Cook, talks about this all the time, about how much, if he was editor of DC Comics, how successful New Frontier was. What he would do is he would want to get the comics to the point where, okay, everybody read New Frontier and get the comics starring these characters back to evoking that feeling that Darwin evoked in New Frontier. So yes, it's incredibly successful. Yes, it's a work that gets to the core of who these characters are and brings joy. So if they can evoke and bring any of that into it, then yeah, that's going to be a success. The other part of it, I think, is, again, marketing. Infinity, you know, we associate that across the street. Marvel's kind of co-opting. Maybe they're going to be able to pull in some readers that way. And the other part of it, I think, is when you look at New Frontier, you know, obviously it's set, you know, back in the past in the Silver Age when things were supposed to be, you know, more innocent time. And you're talking about, you know, building on continuity. And now we're saying Infinite Frontier. And we know DC's been preaching this for a couple of reasons. Continuity doesn't matter. That's what they've been saying, right? Because it frees up people to tell the stories they want to tell, and they hope they're successful, because Black Label's been successful doing this to some extent. It also means these new creators you have coming in that don't have experience don't need to go back and be familiar and pay homage and respect the continuity that's come before. And, you know, you can have readers that can come in and they don't have to be beholden to what's come before. So it does free up in a lot of ways, and it can lead to good stories. But when you directly contradict things that have happened before, I think that's where people, you know, hardcore fans like us don't necessarily enjoy that. But, you know, it may not matter what we enjoy, because ultimately they need to bring in new readers. So from a marketing standpoint, throwing all these ideas and seeing what sticks, hey, it's brilliant. It's really a good job. The problem is, based on the format and the creators and the story ideas that we know about so far from the solicitations, I don't have any confidence that that's what it's going to be. You know, Boom mentioned earlier that it just seems like this is rebirth. You know, we got that incredibly poignant one shot with Wally West coming back, and it was emotional, not a dry eye in the room when it came to hardcore DC fans when Wally came back, and gorgeous art and brilliantly written by Jeff Johns. Here we have Infinite Frontier, and it's an anthology. So how can you have consistency of tone? And some of these characters and some of these creators, frankly, I don't care. I don't want to read it. I will read it because I'm going to pay for it. It's going to be there, and I want my value. But yeah, I think they would have been better off with just one cohesive story setting up what, you know, Infinite Frontier, what the future of DC is going to be. Not that I necessarily feel that Joshua Williamson isn't the right writer to do that, because, you know, he certainly doesn't have the kind of the tools that Jeff Johns has at his disposal, where he, you know, Jeff Johns is like the next generation of Mark Waid, where he has that deep knowledge and seems to be able to connect fans emotionally to the history of the DCU. And Josh Williamson, he just doesn't have that history. He just doesn't have that tool in his toolbox. So he has been, according to interviews that I've read, he did one with Hollywood Reporter, he has been central to this. And when asked if he was the showrunner, he didn't want to take credit for it. But it really seems like, I mean, he's been involved in every DC big event since he's come on. And so he does seem to be kind of central to it. I'm going to be curious to see, you know, is he going to be kind of the next big guy? We know Scott Snyder is pulling away from DC, so to speak. We know Bendis, that's been a colossal failure. It just hasn't worked. So is Williamson going to be the guy? And I worry about that because as much as I like Josh as a person, his writing for me, it doesn't, it's good and it's serviceable and I read the stuff, but it doesn't generate the level of excitement. And it doesn't have the cachet with fans. Like Jeff Johns puts his name on a book, fans flock to it. I mean, the Three Jokers, as long as we had to wait for that, it still was like the biggest selling title, just blew away all expectations that DC had themselves. So like Boom, I'm hopeful for this Infinite Forever, but I'm not getting my hopes up. I'm not getting my expectations up. I'm hopeful, but I'm tempering my expectations so that I'm not let down, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you guys, I feel like we're here so that you guys could get a good dose of balance to really just cordon off that optimism from your other stream, just to sit down and talk with me. Cause I have absolutely no faith per usual. I'm not going off character here at all. It looks like a mess. And if it is if it is in fact the brainchild of Joshua Williamson, it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Because everything this man has done for the last 3 or 4 years at DC has been a mess. And I'll openly admit, the beginning to his Flash run was one of the books at the top of my stack when Rebirth started. I enjoyed the hell out of his Flash run. I thought he did a considerably good job on Justice League versus Suicide Squad. If you asked me back then, I would have said, get Brian Hitch off Justice League, put this guy on Justice League. Couple years down the line, I'm talking a little bit of a different game here. I think aside from the fact that it's definitely foreboding that DC fired a lot of their most experienced editorial staff, editors that I mean, and we've talked about it, months ago. They're editors for the most part that I had a lot of respect for, editors that have helped to chaperone content that I think has been won over, that has won over myself, but you guys and a number of other fans. I mean, what editor at DC Comics has put out more popular content or more quality content than Mark Doyle in the last 10 years? Anyone? Can we name a single editor that's put out the same quality of work as Mark Doyle in the last 10 years at DC Comics? No, we can't. And I would challenge anybody to come up with an answer or to come up with something that refutes that. And with that being said, I don't have a lot of faith in the direction that DC is going in. And mind you, I feel like I might be sounding like I'm contradicting something I said a couple months ago, where I had mentioned how I think DC needs new, hungry talent. I think we need young, new voices that are not just the same old men writing the same stories all the time from the same perspective. But a lot of these writers aren't young and hungry comic book writers. They're pulling them in from other media. And I think there's certainly a difference from somebody who comes over from TV and somebody who's going and making their bones out in the indie market, getting to know the format, know the market itself, this, that, and the other thing, the process of collaboration. You got guys coming in from film, television, so on and so forth. And that I'm not going to say it's overly concerning, because comics have seen some serious success with people making the leap over to comics from other visual media. I mean, Jeff Loeb might be an asshole, but he's one of the best comic book writers currently alive. Whether or not he's still writing is another thing. But
he needs a job.
Right. Right. I mean, who knows? I'm sure he probably burnt so many bridges when he went to Marvel. He just very much gives off that kind of vibe. But, him, Straczynski, I know Kevin Smith is hit or miss for a lot of people, but I think that in terms of sheer revenue, you can't argue his success. So, I'm not overly pessimistic about these new writers. I'm also not optimistic about it. And I think just the way DC's been handled over the last couple of years, and you guys have heard me talk about it in droves, I don't have a lot of faith in that. If this is the trajectory they're choosing to go in, there are obviously some diamonds in the rough, and we'll get into it as we kind of go down the solicitation line and discuss who's on what the direction seems to be for a number of these big iconic characters. But overall, I think 2020 and 2021 are the years where my pull list is just becoming overwhelmingly indie. Not to make this a show about indie comics, because I'm sure we could just talk about how damn good independent comics have been over the last year, but we're in a really interesting space. So Jace, I know you've kind of run down the information. Let's get a general sort of idea of what Infinite Frontier is about. I feel like you're definitely going to be the guy to explain this in the most succinct way possible.
Yeah, so I mean, it's like I said, it's basically an anthology. We're told that, hey, this is the next phase of the DC universe. Death Metal is done. Future State revealed the possible future of the DCU, but what does the current day DCU look like? Mm-hmm. So much of what we believe to be Infinite Forever, and it's not just the one shot; it's also the trade dress that's on the or Infinite Frontier. I think I keep calling it Infinite Forever, but Infinite Frontier. So much of what that is pulls in from Future State. Because I think what's happening here and why these creators are on these books is that they obviously were pitched to do 5G or whatever, and had turned in their concepts, and DC had bought into it and had belief in it. And then Didio leaves. They decide, hey, we're not rebooting the whole line, but apparently they still believe in these ideas. Work has been done beyond what we're seeing in the 2 months of Future State. Obviously, things have been reconfigured and what have you. But I think we're still going to get a lot of what we would have seen, just sort of changed and set in the current DCU. So just like if we would have got 5G, it would have been kind of a new continuity or a new universe. That's basically what Infinite Frontier is, and that's why we're seeing a lot of the same creators that are doing those Future State books. Those same creators on those same characters are doing the monthly books going forward. So in Infinite Frontier, Zero is an anthology where we see a ton of creators tell stories, basically getting us up to speed. So, like what's going on in Suicide Squad, what's going on out in space with the Green Lantern Corps, what's going on at the Hall of Justice with Black Adam, what's going on with Wonder Woman, who apparently is out of the normal DCU, out of the Earth, and is in some place called the God Sphere. And the one that probably most people are going to really enjoy and buy Infinite Frontier for, because again, we talked about the built-in audience that Jeff Johns has. We know he's been very integral in the Stargirl TV series. Well, we've got an all-new Stargirl tale written by Jeff Johns that a lot of people are going to want to check out. So it's a huge amount of talent and a huge amount of people. And supposedly the last story in the anthology is by Joshua Williamson, and he couldn't even say who the characters were in the story, but he said it really sets up everything going forward. So whether it's an event or a person or a villain or some kind of happening that happens that really says, okay, here's what DC is going to be building toward for their next big event. Because don't think of Infinite Frontier as an event. Think of it just as a publishing initiative. But you want to do something to not get me excited about some kind of preview for DC's next big thing. Put Joshua Williamson on it writing, and then tell me that John Romita Jr. is doing the art. Ooh. And I don't even want to. I mean, I'm going to read it, but anything that I read from JRJR that has his art, I read it reluctantly. I read it in protest because man, art has deteriorated over the years. So that's basically what Infinite Zero is, Infinite Frontier Zero. And again, like I was saying earlier, the fact that it's all these anthologies, I just can't imagine that the tone is going to be, consistent. Yes, we have a ton of talent, but I mean, how many of these names are you going to get excited for? Scott Snyder, Jeff Johns, James Tynion, Williamson, Jeffrey Thorne, who's the new Green Lantern writer, Philip Kennedy Johnson, the new Superman writer, Bendis, Becky Cloonan, who's taken over Wonder Woman, along with Michael Conrad, Joel Jones, who's doing the new Wonder Girls series, and then Tim Sheridan, who's the writer for Teen Titans. So it is a big who's who, and there are some conspicuous names absent, which we'll kind of talk about at the end, things that are missing. That's basically what it is, an anthology that, like you said, it's not getting me excited.
Yeah, no, I totally get you. And Mark McKeever, he brings up some pretty interesting names, two of which we know are pretty much have been working with and for DC for years now. So we'll definitely get into that at some point, Mark. I don't want you to think we're going to forget about you, but we want to get there when we get there. Boom, like, just based on what we're hearing about it, what's exciting you? Like what? And we'll get into specific books in a moment, but are there any sort of concepts or approaches they're taking with different spaces in the DC universe that's getting you excited?
Yes. Focusing on what excites me, and I always have the caveat that, man, I could be wrong, but you know what? I'm at 60-40. I'm going to focus on my 60% excitement. And I know, Dark Knight, you'll remind me of the 40% from time to time, and that's all right. So, but no, honestly, what I'm excited about, frankly, the most exciting thing out of the whole damn thing I'm excited about is the Crime Syndicate, the Earth 3. Unless they're following Bendis's model of Earth 3, which he destroyed in the pages of Young Justice. But if they do Earth 3 right, I think the Crime Syndicate is an interesting story. That's actually the freshest idea that's come out of the whole damn thing, is the Crime Syndicate series that would be coming out of it. I like Philip Kennedy Johnson. I like his Last God. He's really good at building those types of stories with a rich mythology. He's really good at putting details in the story. He's really good at following the continuity from issue to issue. He's very good at organizing structure, plot, and pacing. At least he is in The Last God. He hasn't been that great writing superhero tales to date, but it looks like he's taken the bull by the horns on Superman in Action Comics. It's almost like he's repackaging what sounds very much like Bendis's scrapped story idea with the Golden Age, with some creatures from the future coming back to kill Superman, and John Kent coming back from the future to save his dad from this force that wants to kill him, because in Legion lore they believe they know how Superman's going to die, and it sounds like a rehashed Bendis plot. But Philip Kennedy Johnson, Jesus, as if two names isn't enough. It sounds like he's actually passionate. I'm hoping you talked about passionate young writers with he's very passionate. And one thing about Philip Kennedy Johnson is that he's got a very eclectic background. He's been in the military. He's a writer. He's a musician. He's got an incredible resume, quite frankly. That
he's still in the military.
What's that?
He's still in the military. He's active military, and he's part of the band. He travels around with the army band and plays music. So yes, he's very much a Renaissance man. Yeah. I have to admit, not being that familiar with his work, I'd rather would have had Mark Waid or Robin Venditti or Tom Taylor. But
here's hoping he's got Bendis, because Superman's the heart of the DC universe. He's the heart, and to put all their faith in one person, I have to say I'm kind of shocked. At least Mark Waid had the resume to back it up. I'm really surprised that they gave it to Philip Kennedy Johnson. But yeah, certainly the money was likely an aspect of it. That's what's a little bit disappointing. But just a couple other things. I mentioned the Crime Syndicate, Superman. I want to just throw these things out there. I think in terms of the biggest name out there, I think the biggest name in this whole damn thing is Tom Taylor, not Jeff Johns. I don't give a crap about Stargirl. Nobody I know is going to care about Stargirl. It wasn't that great a series when he originally wrote it. I know he wrote it because his sister died in a plane crash in '96. Terrible, I know, but I don't know. Congratulations, we're gonna attract the CW crowd. No, we won't. CW fans don't buy comic books. This has been established a time and time again. It's not going to happen. Okay, we never had an increase in the flash sales because of the CDW. Okay, the CDW network is not been done any favors for comic book sales as far as I'm concerned. So Jeff Johns, Stargirl, that's not going to attract readership. That's not going to increase readership. In my view, Tom Taylor on Nightwing, Redondo, the same team that just finished off their 11-issue Suicide Squad. That is probably the number 2 book. Well, frankly, it's probably number 1, but I like the Crime Syndicate just because I love the Crime Syndicate. But Nightwing, I like And Becky Cloonan, I think she's a wild card on Wonder Woman. She's a wild card. And I want to give props to Becky Cloonan because I've always been a fan of Gotham Academy, and she introduced Maps Mizuguchi, character called Maps from Gotham Academy as the Robin in the backup to, she'll be doing that in the Batman Black and White #4, which to all you speculators out there, pick up that comic book. So, but yeah. So I'm looking forward to Crime Syndicate, Nightwing, and Wonder Woman are probably my biggest look forward to series.
Fair enough. All right, Jace, what about you, man? What's getting you excited?
Yeah, so I'm kind of on board there with Boom. So you can't see him up here, but the kind of the one whole series of DC figures I have all the DC Direct Crime Syndicate, like all of them. But I love the Crime Syndicate. I don't own many early Justice League issues, but I own Justice League 29 and 30, which is the first Crime Syndicate story. So I'm a big fan of the Crime Syndicate. So yeah, I am very excited about that. Although I'm not that familiar. I'm looking now to the writer Andy Schmidt, art by Kieran McKeown. Not that familiar with their work. I can't say that I've heard their names before. We've got an Ultraman story that's drawn by Brian Hitch. So I love Brian Hitch in terms of his storytelling, and he's a super nice guy. I must be one of the only few people who's not a big fan of his art. And here's the thing, like Brian Hitch is one of the best guys at layouts, but it's his finish. Like his aesthetic always leaves me a little cold. Like, yes, his art style is kind of the first that people started using, oh, it looks like a movie. It's very cinematic, it's very landscape. It's real widescreen, I think is the word that I'm searching for there. And that's great. The layout and the storytelling is great, but his actual rendering of characters, especially faces, always leaves me a little cold. But I've kind of warmed up to it when he kicked off Hawkman with Venditti. So I am excited about that. But beyond that, Bendis, I mean, the things that I'm excited about are the things that are changing, but I'm not necessarily excited for what's coming because it's still an unknown and there's nobody's name really grabbing me. So I'm excited that Bendis is off of Superman, but am I excited to see what PKJ does? Maybe. The Superman Red and Blue has me excited because we might get some good Superman stories in the anthology. But there's nothing where I can say, yes, I'm excited about this. I was excited to hear that Ram V was staying on Justice League Dark. But then we found out that it's a backup in Justice League written by Bendis. Man, I don't want to read. I'm not spending $5 to support Bendis's work just to read a 10-page backup. I'm sorry. Dude, I'm not.
I am 100% in the same boat with you on that. Like I literally, I tweeted it out the other day. I was like, this is a damn shame because Ram V is a talented enough writer where he 100% deserves his own feature. Yep. And B, I feel bad because now he's going to lose sales, at least on my end, because as much as I like Ram V as a writer, and I think his Justice League Dark was solid, and I am very much for promoting young, hungry writers and artists, but there's no way I'm giving Bendis' Justice League my money. I'm sorry. I bought pretty much everything he was doing for the first year and a half, almost 2 years when he came to DC. I'm done giving him chances. I'm done. Literally somebody that knows how much of an asshole I can be about critiquing comics would have to come up to me and say, Trev, I really think you're going to like this in order for me to even consider giving it a chance. So I'm with you. It's a damn shame.
I've lost all faith in I mean, I was never a big Bendis fan in the first place, and I've lost all faith in him. And, again, I know a lot of these people personally, and please, nobody, don't ever take my critique of their work for how I feel about them personally. Bendis is one of the most passionate, fun-loving guys about comics I've ever met in my life. You go to a panel that he's hosting or moderating or on, and he makes you want to read comics. His joy for the medium is infectious. But his work lately just doesn't, the quality of his work lately doesn't merit me supporting it. I'm sorry. So it's tough. There's nothing where I can really say other than the Crime Syndicate miniseries. I can't say honestly there's anything I'm excited about. Probably the next book I'm most looking forward to coming back is actually, we were just talking about him, Ram V. His Catwoman series has been incredible. It's like this caper heist, Michael Mann inspired, most authentic voice of Selena I've ever read. So I am excited. Wow. That book has climbed to the top of my stack. I read it, first thing whenever it comes out. So those two books. Other than that, I just, and a lot of it is because I don't know. Like Flash, he's one of my favorite characters, but Jeremy Adams, again, I'm not familiar. Brandon Peterson, I'm familiar with his work, and both as a writer and an artist. And I'm curious about that because the teaser is we don't know who's going to be the Flash. Is it Wally West? Is it Barry Allen? And the teaser talks about some heading down the path of redemption for Wally West, which I thought we did in Death Metal, or maybe it was Flash Forward. I forget at this point, right? So who knows what that? So I mean, there are things I'm curious about the universe overall.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because I'm surprised one of you hasn't brought it up yet. Apparently, we're getting a new Damian, and he's not Robin, but he's wearing a gray outfit. He's wearing a gray and black. It seems to be the same colors as Batman, but they haven't said what his name's going to be, if he's going to have a code name. So I'm curious what the two of you think about this potentially new approach to Damian.
Probably his name's going to be Bratman, since he's Brat. I couldn't care less about Damian. I said it all the time on my podcast. I think he's gone from being an absolutely unreadable character to just being a horrible character in my mind. He has improved to the point where I can tolerate him, but he's going to have backups in both Batman and Detective. But I really couldn't care less when it comes to Damian. I'm just not a fan of the character.
See, I'm actually unsurprisingly on the other end of that spectrum there. I love Damian, just because I think there's so much potential with him as a character for growth. And I think obviously potential for growth leads a lot of room for storytelling, big time. And when you have a really competent writer on Damian, I mean, the books are supreme. Jace, I know you don't like Grant, but Grant Morrison's work on Batman and Robin with Dick and Damian was beautiful. I mean, really,
which explains your love for the character. And I don't begrudge that, at all.
Yeah. And aside from the fact that, I mean, Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason's Batman and Robin is one of my favorite things to come out, like literally in the last 10 years. I think it is brilliant. It is beautiful. Like it just visually and narratively, giving Bruce Wayne the chance to be a father and giving Damian the chance to really learn from him. I mean, I can't do it any justice. If anybody's watching this and hasn't read it, please do yourselves a favor. Go read the book. It was the first omnibus I ever bought for very good reason. So point being is I would be very excited if Joshua Williamson weren't writing those Damian features. I'd prefer Damian to spend more time as Robin, just because I think they're so hot at churning out new Robins and moving somebody else over into this other corner.
Yeah, it's going to be Clown Hunter. That's why they're moving Damian off of. That's my prediction.
I'm so over it because Clown Hunter is just like he's discount Damian. Like that's literally all he is. He's discount Damian, literally to the point where I think at one point when I was still reading Tynion's Batman, I looked at this and I said, if Clown Hunter is Damian, I wouldn't be surprised because he acts a lot like Damian. And I mean, I'm not going to get into a rant on how like mediocre Tynion's Batman run has been. So let me just kind of just sway off of that and go back to Damian. Point being is I would have been excited sheerly because I feel like if they're going to give Damian this new mantle, they're going to pay attention to him. Now, the thing that is discouraging is whose pen are we paying him attention under? You know what I'm saying? So I would have been cool. Williamson's writing Damian. I don't trust him. He's going to get real hammy with it. He's going to either make Damian go full tilt douchebag, or he's going to forget that Damian has an edge to him. There's no doubt in my mind. So,
what's interesting? I just thought about this. I talked about the last story in Infinite. I just talked about an Infinite Frontier. Last story, Joshua Williamson, JR. I couldn't tell us who the character is because it's going to spoil. What happens if the next big event is all Damian driven? What happens if that last story is starring Damian, and we're going to get maybe in April a new Damian series that leads into some event, and Damian is the one who becomes the linchpin. They're trying to, you talk about replacing Batman. We know Batman is the biggest pillar in the DCU. Boom mentioned earlier our conversation that's going to be coming out next week that we had kind of uplifting. It was before some of this news came out, so some of it's going to be kind of out of date. But we talked about how the heart and soul of the DCU is Superman, and as goes his title, I feel like goes the whole universe. But when it comes to kind of the engine that drives the car, it's Batman. Not to mix my metaphors, but what about Damian being that engine? What about all of a sudden the DCU is still a Batman centric, but it's Damian instead of Bruce Wayne? As much as I don't like the character, I would read something like that because it is new and it is fresh and it's intriguing. I would be curious, but to your point, Knight, so dependent on who's writing it, because if it's Williamson, I just don't know if it's going to be dynamic enough to hold my attention. That's just, and I hate so bad saying it because I love Josh as a person, but I don't know. Lately, his work just, I don't want to say boring, but it's been more like by the numbers. It's been predictable, I think, is the problem I've had with it.
I just want to add that in Bendis's Legion of Superheroes, it's already been established in the future that they've rumor has it that the jury is still out as to whether or not in the future they think of Damian. When Damian visited the future, they made some passing comments about meeting the baby Hitler, alluding that he's gonna be the Hitler of the 21st century.
We've seen that before.
And that's been hinted at in the pages of the Legion of Superheroes by Bendis. And now
it's been hinted at in other alternate realities as well. With different I think it was in Detective, wasn't it? It was a storyline with Tim Drake and the future Batman was Damian, and it was a very fascist situation. That could be the future we're headed toward.
Tynan was calling back to Grant Morrison's Batman 666, where it saw a potential future where Damian, I think it was after Bruce dies it was either RIP or from Final Crisis, but after Bruce dies, it's a world where he wasn't impacted by anything Bruce taught him, and he just came on to be basically Judge Dredd meets Punisher meets Batman. So God, I don't even want to make this a
Armageddon. It's Armageddon 2001 all over again, but instead of being Captain Atom or Hawk or whoever, it's Damian.
Dude,
hey, well. They're gonna
leave Damian alone. He's been through enough.
So here's what we're talking about here. We're talking about, we've seen in the pages of Dark Knight Death Metal some steps toward a redemption for Superboy Prime. Now we'll have Batman Prime to take his place. Hey, he's a more popular character, Batman Prime. We don't want to ruin Bruce Wayne. We'll ruin Damian. I mean, he's already whatever for me. I would totally think Damian was a much more interesting character if he just went full villain. He would.
Have you read the Tomasi Batman and Robin?
The one before Rebirth or after?
Yeah, the New 52 run.
So I read like the first 3 issues, and then I bought the first 3 issues of all the New 52 and read all of them, and that was one that got cut because I don't like Damian. And same thing. As much as I'm a huge fan of Jonathan Kent, and Superman's my favorite character, their Super Sons run, I read, I think, the first 4 issues, and I enjoyed it, but not enough to overcome my dislike of Damian.
Okay. So. Do me a big favor. Next time you have time on your hands, give the Tomasi Batman and Robin run a try. I cannot recommend it enough. Seriously. Like if any book is going to convince you at least not to hate Damian, it's that one.
I don't hate him. I don't hate him anymore. He has made strides. I will say that. But I also remember being so excited when they killed him. So excited. It's just terrible to admit. And then, of course, they brought him back right away. And I'm like,
yeah. I mean, I like Damian, and I liked the resulting Batman and Robin arc from it. But as much as I love Damian, I also don't want to make this the infinite Damian frontier. So I think just briefly, I'll say what I'm most excited for. We can kind of go through some of these solicitations. Obviously, Nightwing by Tom Taylor is just like the perfect meeting point to what everybody was asking for. There was a corner of people asking for him to come on to Batman. a corner of people, myself included, asking him to come on to Superman. What better compromise could you possibly have than Nightwing? I mean, seriously. And the interesting thing for me is that this is going to be the first time ever, I think, that I'll be buying Nightwing and not buying Batman. So that'll be fun. But Nightwing is perfect because within this character's sort of overarching narrative, there's a lot of tragedy and there's a lot of drama to deal with, but there's that uplifting nature of the character that totally contradicts Bruce Wayne, that leaves in a lot of room for levity, that leaves in a lot of room just to show some straight heart that I think Tom Taylor's really going to capture. Now, I'll admit that I think a couple of the projects that people are touting this year from Tom Taylor have been fairly overrated. None of them bad, but overrated in my opinion. I'm not loving Dead Planet. I think it's fine. I'm not loving Seven Secrets. I think it's fine. But I still have a lot of faith in Tom Taylor to go through and execute a Dick Grayson Nightwing book. Second off, and I hate to say it just because as a Batman fan, I'm just getting so damn tired of Batman, but that new Batman anthology, it's like urban something.
Urban Legends.
Urban Legends looks really good. It looks really freaking good. For those of you that don't know, it's a 64-page book featuring a mainline story by Chip Zdarsky and Eddie Barrows. I mean, I have been screaming into the ether for Eddie Barrows to come back to Gotham for years. Eddie Barrows is one of the best artists in comics, one of the most underrated artists in comics. And I mean, Chip Zdarsky is just doing a bang up job on Daredevil. And so I think it's a brilliant pairing. Brandon Thomas, and I don't know who the artist is, but they're doing an Outsiders feature, which I think is great. I love the Outsiders. It's a great C-list team, I think, that has a lot of potential. It's a great cast. I was also fond of the Brian Hill Outsiders run, albeit kind of at a slow pace. And I'm missing another one. What's the third story in the
So the artist with Brandon Thomas is Max Dunbar, and then there's a Harley Quinn story from Stephanie Phillips, art by Laura Braga. So same writer that's on Harley in Future State, and also the same writer that's going to be on. Is there a regular Harley? Yeah. There's a regular Harley book as well. That's going to be by Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo.
Yeah. I'm pretty indifferent about the Harley thing, but I'm really big into the Zdarsky Batman mainline feature and the Outsiders feature. So that's got me sold. I mean, to no one's surprise, we're going to be getting a hell of a lot of Batman and a hell of a lot of Gotham and a hell of a lot of Joker. So with that, I think it's cool if we shoot through some of these, and I'll share it on the screen with you guys right now. But I mean, we've already kind of talked about it a little bit. Batman Urban Legends is the first thing to pop up here. I've obviously shared my thoughts on it. I'm really curious, particularly with you, Jace, because I know you're real hot and cold with Chip Zdarsky, mostly cold. What are your thoughts on this overall little anthology, and particularly the Zdarsky Batman?
So the biggest problem. I like the fact that they're going to an anthology model. Like we've been asking for it for a long time. It's a way to get B and C list characters that can't carry their own title. So I am excited that DC seems to be heading down this path. And even though I complained about it earlier about the backup features, I am excited about that as well. But for me, that's going to be on a case-by-case basis, right? Like I said, I'm not going to spend, if I don't like the main story, I'm not spending $5 just for a 10-page backup. But I'm old enough to have bought Adventure Comics when it was an anthology, and I enjoyed that. It's how I got introduced to a lot of characters, Robot Man and Tarantula and Manhunter and that kind of thing. So I like the idea. The drawback is at $7.99, which that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. I mean, not necessarily a problem for me, especially because I get preview copies, but we're talking about trying to bring in new readers, and that's going to be tough. So and especially when you talk about digital, paying $7.99 for not even owning the comic is tough. But I will say I wouldn't be as excited for a Zdarsky Batman story because I feel like I'm reading that over in Daredevil. But what Zdarsky's doing, it's actually a Red Hood story. So, I think that based on the strength of his Daredevil run, Zdarsky is the perfect person to take on Jason Todd. So I am curious about that. But this is going to be one of those things where I'm probably gonna pick it up. I'll say I'm not 100% sure on it, because like Knight said, it's Batman all the time, and almost had enough of Batman at this point. But it may be a situation where there are stories that I don't read. I buy the anthology, and then there's stories that I skip, which makes it kind of tough to justify that price. I wouldn't say I'm excited, but I expect that this is probably going to be one of their titles that does well. And like you said, it makes a lot of sense just due to the popularity of Batman, and it's a chance to give writers, new voices a chance. Hey, let's see if you can meet a deadline. Let's see how readers respond to your work without dedicating,
and especially just using the draw of a name like Zdarsky, and then putting, just newer creators on the book to kind of just expose them. Because one of the problems that I've always had with DC is when they do like these holiday specials or whatever, it's almost all new people with no notoriety. There's not a lot selling the book to comic book fans. I think putting a big mainline writer like Chip Zdarsky on that book and using that to expose somebody like, Brandon Thomas, who is from what I hear, a very talented writer, an editor in the industry who's been working almost as long as I've been alive in comics.
Nice too.
Yeah. Joseph Illich has nothing but incredible things to say about Brandon Thomas. So it's exciting. And it's nice to see DC thinking ahead. And obviously it's not necessarily with the intent to expose Brandon Thomas, but if it's a byproduct, I will definitely take it. And lastly on this, before I give it over to Boom, because I won't shut up about it, is that I'm all for somebody handling Red Hood and showing that character some respect, because he's been dragged through the mud the last couple of years. I mean, just look at his freaking outfit. It looks stupid. You put him back in the classic Judd Winnick, Doug Monk, Red Hood helmet or something. But I'm all for it. It seems like a great idea. So before I get into the point where
let me say one more thing too. So yeah, so Brandon Thomas is on the Outsiders, and you mentioned Joseph Illich. He's the one that introduced me to Brandon. Brandon did a lot of work at Lion Forge, and Joseph was editor-in-chief over there. Did we mention that there's a Matthew Rosenberg story too about Grifter? I'm excited about that.
Yes.
So that's super exciting. And so you mentioned this as a chance to, hey, use a writer like Chip Zdarsky to pull in people and get introduced to other writers. Matthew Rosenberg, he's got a pretty big profile, but Brandon Thomas, a lot of people don't know. Stephanie Phillips, a lot of people don't know. The fact that it's called Batman Urban Legends, but there's no Batman stories in it. It's Red Hood, it's the Outsiders, but not Batman. It's Katana, it's Metamorpho. Can't remember who the third character is that's mentioned in the solicitations. Black Lightning, of course. So, and Harley Quinn. So you've got 4 Batman related characters, but no Batman himself, but it's called Batman Urban Legends. You're going to get people that buy it expecting Batman, and maybe they'll get introduced to one of these characters and fall in love with one of them. So yeah, Batman has the name, Zdarsky has the name, and hopefully getting introduced to new concepts. It's what anthologies do, like I was talking about earlier with backup stories.
Yeah, 100%. Boom. I know we've been going off on it for a while, but what do you have to say about this anthology book? How are you feeling?
Well, let's be blunt. DC absolutely needs an anthology because, quite frankly, one of the things that the DC universe will no longer have is that they're no longer going to have families. They don't have superhero families anymore like Marvel does. They don't have much of a Superman family anymore. They have a huge Batman family, but that's it. It's DC. The DC universe is all Batman now, and they can't even build on their ancillary characters without calling the freaking title Batman Urban Legends, and he has nothing to do with the interior. I cannot imagine having so little faith in your product, so little faith in your characters, so little faith in your intellectual property that you have to put Batman, you have to mislead the public to get them to read about any other ancillary character. It is pathetic. Now, I'm absolutely going to get it because it's the only way I'm going to be able to read a story about Blue Beetle or Booster Gold or some other ancillary character. It's presumably going to show up in an anthology. I'm not going to have a choice. So I'm looking forward to it. And frankly, I mean, call it. I mean, I'm not an idiot. I understand the whole corporate mentality, but you know what? Have a little bit of faith in your readership. Why not call it? What about the DC universe? How about How about Tales of the DC Multiverse? Or
we're lucky that they didn't change the name to Batman in the DC universe.
Well,
Batman's Infinite Frontier.
or Infinite Frontiers, #1, or DC Infinite, or something. Just, I mean, expand beyond Batman. It's just again, as far as the content, I mean, I love Chip Zdarsky. I mean, he's on fire right now. And with Stillwater, his indie work, his Daredevil. I mean, he's on fire. I mean, he's the one thing that they've done that right. And Matthew Rosenberg he was rejected by, he's no longer working for Marvel. His work at Marvel was underwhelming. That's why they essentially got rid of him. And so now he's come to DC. So yeah, give him some work. That's fine. Most of the other writers here are the positive thing, the 60% positive I can say is that as they can impress me. I'm waiting to be impressed. Impress me. I look at the Flash writer Jeremy Adams. Never heard of him. He's writing Flash, and guess what his premise is? The redemption of Wally West. I chuckle at that because hasn't he been redeemed twice already? He was redeemed in the pages of Flash Forward. I'm pretty sure he was redeemed twice in Death Metal already. Once in the last pages of the DC universe, and also he gave a nod to the dead resurrected Roy Harper after Batman resurrected Roy Harper with his Black Lantern ring, and then he hugged Donna Troy. So he's been redeemed 3 times already, but let's redeem him again. Don't get me wrong, I'm going off a little bit on a rant, but here's what all this has in common. The one thing that the comic books that all of us have stated that we like and are looking the most forward to, the one thing they have in common is that they are the most likely to be character-driven narratives. Nightwing, we know, is going to be character-driven because the moment we heard the plot, the same mafia family that killed Nightwing's family is going to be mayor of Bloodhaven. Already, it's character-driven because that's what Tom Taylor focuses on. It's character-driven. Even the crime syndicate. It's the characters of the crime syndicate that makes that such interesting a concept. So I'm hoping that will be a character-driven tale. The concern I have across the board for this Infinite Frontier is that all of this is plot-driven. The plots are just outrageous. Wonder Woman's in some sphere. Superman is wearing chains, and he's in a ridiculous scenario. John Kent shrinking Metropolis. Just absurd plot scenarios, which would never happen. Like character-wise, it's. I mean, I get it. It's comic books. You got to have outrageous plots once in a while, but I really question. What they need to let the characters drive these stories. And I fear that for the vast majority of these stories, they're going to be just plot driven, and the plots are going to move the characters around. And as opposed to the characters really having an impact on the story through their decision making. And that's the one thing that I'm going to be on the lookout for.
Yeah.
I was really worried when you said what are all the ones we're most excited about have in common. They're all, and I was afraid you were going to say most likely to be canceled. Sorry, we're not even going to finish Crime Syndicate. It's not selling. We'll put out a trade eventually. Sorry, Nightwing's not selling enough. We're going to cancel it.
Honestly, though, like before pre-Future State, or like walking into Future State, most of the books that I was still buying at DC were like minis with the very occasional ongoing that I've been on the fence about dropping anyways. So like that's a very valuable very valid kind of concern. I mean, if they didn't announce some of these books that have obviously piqued my interest for all the shit I'm kind of talking about DC's Infinite Frontier, I would have probably been down to Batman Black and White, and that was it. Well, if things were going the same way they were going.
The line isn't robust. There's like 36 single issues when you take into account, I don't know what we call it anymore. It's not Vertigo, but when you take into account kind of the off-mark, the stuff that's separate from the superhero stuff, the shared universe stuff. Even counting that stuff, you only have 36 issues.
Yeah.
Single issues. So they definitely culled the line.
Yeah, 100%. And it's I mean, for better or for worse, I think worse, but who am I to say? I mean, and also I mean, to no one's surprise, I will give Boom a little bit of pushback regarding the naming the title, the Batman Urban Legends. It had to happen. It had to happen. And I know you have faith in the readers. Readers, I love you. Like I guess I can call myself a published comic book writer now. I love you, but
Woo!
you weren't gonna buy a grifter book. You weren't going to buy an outsider's book. They had to put the name Batman on there, and it's shown. I mean, we've seen countless books that over the last couple of years that were solid. The first 12 issues of Robert Venditti's Hawkman were incredible. Guess who bought it? No one. No, I mean, so us three and maybe another handful of people. Like, I mean, honestly,
when it comes to grifter and certain characters like that, it's for me, it's all about who's the creator. I could follow it because of the writer. I could follow it because of the artist. Hopefully, it's both. But it's for me, some of those characters that I have less interest in. It's very creator centric. Like who is writing it?
Yes.
Who's drawing it?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. I mean, I'm in that same camp. If it's a character that I wouldn't have otherwise cared about, if somebody's attached that I'm a fan of, I mean, that's why I'm excited for the grifter story. I like Matt Rosenberg. I think he's underrated. I think his little Punisher run that he did, one of my favorite little uncut gems of the last couple of years. It was a great book. And I think that if anybody's going to make me interested in someone like Grifter, it's him. But
yeah, I agree. I'm a huge fan of his Uncanny X-Men run.
Yeah, he's a good writer. Nobody talks about him. And he's again, like Philip Kennedy Johnson, he is one of those people that were part of Scott Snyder's sort of initiative to bring young writers in. Yeah, I mean, I think there's been an overwhelming amount of mediocrity to come from it, but we've gotten Tynan, who's, I will contend that his independent work is just been top of the line this year. Some people do like his Batman. I'm not one of them. We talk about Philip Kennedy Johnson, who has proven to be quite successful in terms of the quality of the content in Last God. Whether or not, you're in Boom's camp and you're not a fan of his superhero work is another thing. And now he's given a chance to prove himself. And Rosenberg. So, I'm thinking Rosenberg might be able to come to DC and do his thing, Next up, we got
speaking of tie-in, I'm going to go first on this one.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we have Jace's favorite character in the DC universe. The Joker is getting an ongoing. Take it away, man.
Let me put on my giant hypocrite hat. As much as I absolutely despise Joker, was not going to buy this. No interest whatsoever. Hell no. And then one of my favorite artists of all time and a really good friend of mine whose work I always support shows off of this amazing variant cover for the cover of Joker 1. Yes, I'm being a hypocrite. I'm buying Joker #1, only Joker #1, and I'm not going to read it. Mark Brooks has an amazing alternate cover. I am buying the Mark Brooks cover of this book. There it is. Absolutely spectacular, gorgeous work from Mark Brooks. And I'm salty about it. And I called Mark out, like, dude, why are you doing this to me? He's like, I get you every time. So yes, I am going to buy Joker #1 because I'm just this cover, and I'm not going to read it. And I say that, and I'm sure I'll get sucked in and read it so I can review it. But yeah, not excited. And I ran a poll, and I got 50% of the responses were indifferent, like meh, Joker, whatever. And the other 50% were WTF DC, enough with the goddamn Joker already. So I'm out on this. I'm so absolutely effing sick of the Joker.
Yeah.
I draw the line at the Joker. I'm done.
I don't want to disappoint you guys, but I am 100% with Jace. I mean, we're setting some records here, but this is one of the most creatively deprived misunderstandings of the Joker I've seen in forever and a half. It's been tormenting enough. And let's put this disclaimer out there. Where I diverge from Jace is that I love the Joker, and I think he's an absolutely excellent villain when used well. And here's the kicker: when used sparingly, which has not been a way that I could describe DC's use of the Joker the last 5 years. This is insane. Joker is one of those characters that you use as an accent point. You bring him in when you think things are safe, right? You bring him in to cut through whatever is going on. the knife gets dull the more you use it, and you don't give it time to be sharpened. You got to wet the blade. And that's certainly not the case here. I hated Joker War. Joker War sucked. I don't care what anybody says. It blew ass. And in no small part to what was going on with the Joker. I don't care about this book. I love Mark Brooks. I'm not friendly with him like Jace is. This cover looks great. However, there is no way in hell I am giving this book my money. I'm definitely in that, I would say, the teenage phase of being a comic book fan. I'm just rebellious. I'm just saying fuck the world, including this book. And I will hand it over to somebody that I know is 100% buying this book. Boom. What do you think about it? I know you're buying it, but what do you actually think about it?
Well, let's be blunt, and let me just point out, in a quid pro quo here, let me just point out some of your hypocrisy here. I mean, you don't think that DC can anthologies? They got to name it Batman Urban Legends, otherwise nobody would buy it if they named it anything else. It's about sales. You have to name it Batman or Urban Legend. Well, guess what? I mean, if the Joker. Joker should only be used sparingly. Why? He's a popular character. He had $1 billion movie, of course. I mean, the biggest non-surprise from these advertisements from DC is that they're doing a Joker comic. This was predictable. My God, of course they're going to do a Joker comic. So this is the new reality with DC. They're going to go with what sells. The Joker's going to sell comic books. It doesn't matter how bad this story is going to be. It doesn't matter. It's going to sell. And the reality is, the only way you can reconcile what I would like and what you would like and what I think is best for DC in the long run is that have this Joker series be a series that actually has guest starring in it many other B and C list DC characters in the Joker series, such that the Joker series, I hope, becomes more of an anthology in and of itself to showcase other characters in the DC universe. That's what I'm hoping it does. And that way it will be a Joker series in name only. It'll have the Joker in it just enough, but it'll have more B and C list characters to advertise, to get exposure to other DC characters, so that at least we'll give the illusion that the Joker is being used sparingly and not overused, because let's face it, all three of us can agree we're sick of the Joker.
So, I mean, I wish your optimism was rewarded in a way, but I mean, just looking at this solicitation, it's about the Joker. It's about this big impact that he's made after Infinite Frontier #1. Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is that Harper Row is making a comeback as Bluebird, which is great. I thought Harper Row was actually an unfortunate casualty of the New 52. I was interested in her when she was first introduced, and they just kind of threw her off to the side. But like, why not just make it a Punchline book? Like, Punchline sells. Like, Punchline isn't so oversaturated that I wouldn't give her a chance if it were a Punchline Bluebird, antagonist kind of story. But
James Gordon, the one thing about the solicitation that intrigued me, but not enough to overcome my dislike of the Joker, is the fact, James Gordon, he lost his role as commissioner when he got infected with the anti-life equation during the year of the villains, whatever. He's the one, James Gordon, facing retirement, realizes the manhunt of his life, and he's going after the Joker. I love Jim Gordon. I'd love to read Jim Gordon. Like, let's make a Jim Gordon book instead of a damn Joker book. And then you can go after Joker, once, or Punchline, or Kite Man, or Condiment King, or Maxi Zeus, or that I'm there for that. Give me that. I could care less about the Joker.
I mean, I think we've been due for a good little GCPD book for a long time. I agree. I mean, the idea of getting a Jim Gordon led in some capacity story is exciting, but and let me put this out there. I would love for what Boom had to say potentially about this book to be true. I would love to be proven wrong. Please, DC, do something productive with this book, and I will 100% go back and buy it if it's just Joker in name only. But look at the history. I mean, what DC's done with the Joker over the last 5 years. I mean, he's pretty much become DC's
Fifth
third
pillar?
or fourth pillar. I mean,
Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Harley Quinn, Joker, and
I
not
mean,
in that order. It's more like
I don't want to spoil anything, but
Batman, Harley Quinn, Joker, Superman, Wonder Woman, I guess is the order you go.
honestly, though, is Wonder Woman even a pillar anymore? I mean, and no spoilers. You guys will have to keep an eye out because Comic Boom and Comic Book University and I have been working on something for you guys, and we kind of approached that topic. But and I'm not going to get too far into depth with that here. But is Wonder Woman even a pillar? I mean, I think they certainly try to make her seem like a pillar, but her book doesn't sell.
Yeah, when I'm talking about a pillar, I'm not just talking about the comics. I'm talking about, as an IP, as a property. Yeah, Wonder Woman makes them a ton of money, not in the comics, but in merchandise and licensing. And when I think about those characters, I'm thinking about them as a whole, as an IP that generates revenue for them. Those are probably their top 5 characters that make them money. Probably in that order: Batman, Harley Quinn, Joker, Superman, Wonder Woman. Superman might be up a little higher. He certainly generates more money for them as an idea in merchandise and such than he does, T-shirts and that kind of thing, than he does as a comic. Obviously, I mean they all do.
Absolutely.
Superman probably might be up a little higher.
Yeah, no, you make a good point there. It's just, I mean, Boom said it. We're tired of the Joker. I'm just tired, and I'm at the point where I think I'm just not. I mean, obviously, Jace, you're sort of your get out of jail free card is that you're pals with Mark Brooks and you love his work. I know Boom is just so far ingrained into the collector's market and that as a hobby. It's for all intents and purposes, it's his addiction. Me, on the other hand, I've definitely collected a decent share of comics, nowhere near Boom, but I don't think I've gotten to the point where my need to collect has overrun my need, or I would say my sort of fervent damnation of bad comics. So, I to be fair, I think I'd also bite off my nose to spite my face. So that's just me, to be fair. Now moving on into the next book, we said her. Some of you love her. We all know her, Harley Quinn. I'm honestly just going to completely pass the baton because I have nothing to say. I'm totally indifferent about Harley. Boom, I know you are the resident Harley guy in this party. How are you feeling about Harley Quinn post-Future State going into Infinite Frontier?
I actually, I don't know if I'm really the Harley guy. I've never been. I collect a lot of Harley, and I always have an opinion on her. But I actually think that she's. I think she's very corporate now. I think she's. I don't think she's a particularly interesting character. I don't think she's generally well written. I'm not. I think we're past the time. It's no longer possible to get a good Harley Quinn story in the mainstream DC universe because she's beyond that. They will not allow her to be written in a way that would make her in such a way that she would have to be in order to be interesting to me, because Harley will always be for me a psychopath, and she should be written that way. And she's an abuser, not just an abusee, and that's the lovable Harley and everything else, the cartoon Harley, the one that swears, the Harley that can emasculate men, humiliate men, come out smiling, do whatever she wants, gets away with it, never pay a price, be a complete bitch, get away with it, written in all kinds of different ways, and you can always get away with it. You can never write a bad Harley anymore. I've said this before. I'm a broken record. Harley is different things to different writers. Stephanie Phillips is writing her. I'm a fan of Stephanie Phillips. Stephanie Phillips is going to be writing her, at least for Stephanie Phillips wrote Artemis and the Assassin. She wrote A Man Among Ye. Stephanie Phillips is an up-and-coming writer. I think that she's only getting better. So I think for her to whet her appetite with Harley is probably not a bad idea. Riley Rosmo's art is so stylistic. It's probably good to put him on Harley Quinn. He might even find a new audience. I know a lot of people don't like that beautiful by the way, that variant cover you just showed there is by I forget the artist's name, but that's one to look for the spec market. That cover you're showing right now is that's fantastic. But in any event, Riley Rosmo is an artist that a lot of people don't have a lot of nice things to say about his art. It's not the DC traditional style. It hasn't really been received very well. Even on when he did the DC multiverse issue of Robin King. But I mean, he's slowly developing, I think, sort of a niche audience. Maybe Harley Quinn. You know, I think she's the ideal character to try to put different artistic styles on. And I think DC's AT&T is going to be taking that approach. I think clearly they are. You know, it's interesting. We talk about anthologies. If any character should be maybe. I would love to see a Harley Quinn anthology where we get different interpretations of Harley Quinn, because I would love that, because I would love to see a darker version of Harley Quinn, then a lighter version. I would love to see a collection of Harley Quinn stories throughout Hyper Time or throughout the multiverse. I think that would be very, very interesting, because to me, Harley represents all the flaws and all the beautiful range of flaws and the beautiful disaster of women. She represents women at their best and at their worst, and I would just love to. I would love to see that. But I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for Harley, but I don't think it's gonna be eating up the sales charts, to be honest.
Fair enough. Jace, what are you thinking, man?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Stephanie Phillips, but I'm not a fan of Harley. I agree with Boom. She's been totally corporatized since she kind of became that fourth pillar of the DCU. She's too valuable to. That's the thing. If a character gets too popular and becomes too valuable, you can't ever move them from the status quo very much. You know, and Harley has they've moved her subtly over to the point where even in the most recent issue of Batman, she comes right out and says, "I'm trying to be the best hero I can be," basically. So she's not a bad guy anymore. She's Harley, and yeah, she still has those psychopathic roots, but yeah, there's never going to be an extreme story with Harley. To me, that makes her less interesting. That being said, I'm not a fan of the zany Harley anyway. So, and it's not that there can't be good Harley stories, because to what Boom was just talking about, I would be much more likely to buy a multiverse anthology of Harley, because the best Harley stories I've read ever in my life, Joker Criminal Sanity by Cami Garcia, where she's like a criminal profiler and Joker serial killer, and it's much more, true to life. And then the White Knight universe, Sean Gordon Murphy's universe. It's actually written by Katana Collins, who's Sean's, I think, wife or girlfriend.
Wife.
And it's the same thing. It's a different version of Harley. She's much more grounded. She's not zany. And I find that to be much more interesting. So,
and the digital, I would add the digital series, or the Harley digital series, Black, White, and Red, I think it's called.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I have
got different stories in it.
So yeah, I mean, even though I'm a fan of Stephanie, this is a pass for me. I'm one of those people that Boom was just talking about that doesn't like Riley Rossmo's art. The only time I've enjoyed it was on the Martian Manhunter maxi series he did with Steve Orlando, and it worked there because Martians are shape changers, and so it worked.
Yeah.
But yeah, too stylized, not my cup of tea. So yeah, it's a hard pass for me.
Yeah, I mean, Riley Rossmo, I actually think, for as much as I'm not a fan of his work, and I think he actually gets way too much work in mainstream comics, I think he's a good fit for Harley in the zaniness, and he's a good fit for corporate Deadpool Harley. Do I like corporate Deadpool Harley? Not really. To be fair, my exposure to Harley is quite limited. The only Harley that I've really gone out of my way to expose myself to is obviously the original animated series and the earlier Paul Dini Harley stuff when she first got introduced into the comics. But otherwise, I'm indifferent. I'm not going near it for sure. So if anybody wants wants a reliable source to talk about Harley Quinn with, I guess Jason and I are both going to have to poke at Boom here and refer you to him. But so we have DC's Crime Syndicate, which is interesting because up until 2 seconds ago when I pulled up the article, I guess that's more like a half an hour ago, I had no idea this was coming. I'm kind of on the fence. I don't know if I'm going to buy it. I'm also not against it. I know you guys have kind of spoken your piece for the most part about it, but is there anything else either of you want to mention about the Crime Syndicate book?
I'm super excited. That's all I need to say.
Yeah, I will say that I think that was the one with Andy Schmidt. He's got he has a lot of he's done some editorial work for Marvel, and he's only done a little bit of comic book work, really. So he's one of the more, I think he's looking for more experience. I'm really hoping that he's passionate about the characters. I think that I'm really hoping he's the wild card, because I think, it's like you can take a bunch of inexperienced or less experienced writers and put them all in a room. One of them's going to bloom. You can plant a bunch of seeds. One of them is going to bloom for sure. And I'm hoping that this is it, because, man, the Crime Syndicate is just, I think it's such I think of Grant Morrison's Earth 2 hardcover. I hope that's the template more so than the nonsense that Bendis poisoned Earth 3 with in Young Justice. Remember that Owlman sacrificed himself in the pages of Death Metal because he knew that he would be resurrected again. He knew that he knows that Batman always needs an opposite in the multiverse, and that opposite, and the best opposite, is Owlman on Earth 3. He arrogantly believed that. I believe that. Fans believe that. Fans want that. And this comic book really, I think, needs to nail it, and I hope it does.
Wow, that's news to me, because, well, I don't feast my eyes upon the garbage that is Death Metal. So that's kind of interesting. I agree with that sentiment. And honestly, like, hearing you guys talk about it certainly starts to convince me more towards the direction of picking this book up and giving it a shot. Like Jace had mentioned earlier, I'm not a big Brian Hitch guy in terms of his art. I'm curious as to whether or not. Okay, so backup story art is by Brian Hitch. I wonder if Andy Schmidt's writing the backup or if Hitch is writing the backup. Hitch certainly can't write to save his life. And his art is again, like, it's real hit or miss, mostly miss. I was a fan of what he was doing on Hawkman. I think his Ultimates was pretty okay. Otherwise, I've had ample criticisms to give to Brian Hitch for how static his camera, or not camera, his camera work's actually pretty good. How static his character acting is. Jace had mentioned how sort of vanilla his layouts are. Yes, they're widescreen. Yes, it's cool. But boy, does it get old just seeing 3 or 4 widescreen panels on every page. And if that's the only way you can draw effect after being a veteran comic book artist, I think it's kind of sad. And let me put the disclaimer out here that, there are a lot of these creators that I don't speak highly of their work, but like Jace, I think that they're great people. For everything I've ever heard, Brian Hitch seems like a gentleman and a scholar. Seems like a real nice guy. I love hearing him talk about comics. I don't like seeing the stuff he draws. So, I think you guys might have done a pretty good job at selling me on this book. So DC, I don't know if you want to cut them a little royalty check or what, but I think they deserve it at this point, because I wouldn't have touched it otherwise.
I just want to add, Dark Knight, that I know that you're not a fan of Death Metal, but I think you would have actually, part of you would have really enjoyed the one-shot Death Metal when Owlman actually he actually helped save the day by sacrificing Earth 3, because he discovered through John Stewart that in fact he is that everything's going to come back again, and that the universe basically resets itself. And he discovered that he's Owlman, and he very arrogant, like he hates the Batman Who Laughs, because the Batman Who Laughs showed him up, because the Batman Who Laughs is the ultimate negative Batman, but that's what Owlman thinks he is. And so Owlman betrayed the Batman Who Laughs because how dare you steal my limelight? And that was really it. And it was actually a well-written character, and consistent with how the character's been written in the past, and building on Jeff Johns' idea, and even Grant Morrison's Earth 2 hardcover, which, if no one's read Grant Morrison's Earth 2 hardcover, I mean, good God, man, go out and buy that. Or Comixology, by the way, is having a fantastic sale, a 94% off Marvel. I bought a slew. I literally bought, I bought 40 different Marvel collections.
The Masterworks?
$20. It's insane. It was so cheap, 94% off. And DC has selling a lot of the stuff on Comixology too. Go and check out Comixology.
Yeah. I'll agree with you, man. I actually picked up the first volume of the Marvel Masterworks for Fantastic Four. And I mean, boom, you know why. We were just talking about Fantastic Four a little while ago. The Avengers, Spidey, and the X-Men. it's a ridiculous sale. And you guys know me, I'm very much about go to your local comic book store, but damn, 94 cents for a Marvel, or 89 cents for a Marvel Masterwork.
Yeah.
Can't pass it up. And I mean, I love Owlman. I think Owlman is one of the greatest sort of antithetical figures in comics in general. I actually have an Owlman commission by Jonathan Glapion. You guys have seen when I used to have my office, I had that series of commissions from Jonathan Glapion with Batman villain heads, Two-Face, Scarecrow, and Mr. Freeze. I actually had commissioned an Owlman the last New York Comic Con. Rest in peace. I love you, New York Comic Con. May you rise from the dead like Lazarus. And he's a great character. So yeah, the more we talk about it, the more I get interested in this. Will I go support a Dark Knight's death metal one shot? We might need a little bit more convincing and a lot of whiskey. So let's move on into the next book here. And right before we do, I think Mark McKeever brings up a really interesting question that I wanted to share on the screen here. Will we speculate on whether or not we think this is the last hurrah for DC if this soft reboot doesn't meet sales expectations? Any of you guys want to start that one off?
DC Comics is never going away. They're never going to stop printing comics, no matter how bad the sales get. Remember, in order to maintain trademarks and maintain copyright, you have to actively be using the characters. So, whether the model could change and they could go to some kind of quarterly anthology or something, it's possible, but I just think it's super, super unlikely. There's always going to be a market out there for people that want to collect and want to buy monthly comics. So I would say if it completely fails, we could see further cutbacks. We could see the line shrink even more. I would be shocked if it ever went down to below like 20 books a month. Anybody who says, yeah, is this the last hurrah or comics are dying? Go look at Comic-Con. Go look at the sales numbers. Comic sales in the pandemic have been up across the board. Comics are selling more than they have in many recent years. 2020 is going to be a banner year for sales. Creatively, DC may be, heading down the wrong path, but Marvel's doing well. Independent is doing well. And even if creatively Marvel's, shit in the bed here, they're not going away. Anybody who says, oh, DC is going to, you hear certain corners of the internet has been writers that are complete, or artists rather, that are complete assholes. I know from personal experience, and you all know who I'm talking about. DC's dying. DC's going to license their characters, blah, blah, blah. No, part of the reason that AT&T bought Warner Brothers is because of the value of these properties. They're not going away. They're not going to stop making monthly comics. It's simply not going to happen. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what the rumors you hear. It is not going to happen. There's too much value in it beyond the printed page for them to stop making comics. It would be a PR nightmare for DC to stop making monthly comics. It's just not going to happen.
Yes. Yeah. I'm going to add to that. By taking a slightly different tact, by referencing the Disney's success with Star Wars, and to remind people and remind DC and AT&T that continuity matters. Star Wars is successful. Mandalorian saved Disney. It's because continuity, the Star Wars continuity. Dark Horse comics are flying off the shelf. Expanded universe, the idea that there's a story behind the story, that these characters have history. History matters. Continuity matters. You build a loyal fan base and through continuity, and that fan base will never leave you. And that's why AT&T, it's very important that while they're building all this infinite frontier, be very, very careful when you keep saying that everything matters, because that's very close to saying nothing matters. If everything matters, then nothing matters. Just remember that everything might matter, but you got to build. Some things matter more than others. Okay. And better stories, focus on the best stories. Don't keep throwing crap at a wall, randomly hoping something's going to stick. Don't be afraid to take a chance. Don't be afraid to take chances on these characters. And don't forget that you've got more in your wheelhouse than just bat this and bat clone that and the Batman who laughs. And I'll leave it at that.
I think Taylor Pector sums it up pretty well here, in regards to continuity. He says it matters, but it shouldn't be a crutch. And I think it's a very valuable point. I mean, just generally regarding how I feel about Mark's question, these guys pretty much answered it for me, which is crazy because not only have I agreed with Jace and Boom individually tonight, I'm agreeing with them both at the same time. I know we had to come back strong for you guys. They'll never go away. These properties are way too valuable. Jason brought up, some of the sort of legislature around copyright. But these IPs sell big. The package that we'd be receiving in terms of publishing is certainly going to change over the next couple of years. I mean, we're already starting to see it change now with these bigger issues, with backup stories, more anthologies. Because let's be real, anthologies have done pretty well for DC. Detective 1000 sold buku bucks. Action 1000 buku bucks. Detective 1027 buku bucks.
Yeah, Metal's had a lot of anthologies, and those have sold well also.
Right. So, clearly that seems to be a successful avenue for DC. And frankly, it's easier to tell a small, tight anthology story than it is to tell your sprawling epic. And, sometimes creators need that smaller sandbox to play in. So no matter what happens, we're going to be getting these characters on the page in some sort of capacity. The presentation, of that is going to be, who knows, but DC Comics will never die. I think Marvel would buy DC from a hemorrhaging AT&T before you ever saw DC Comics go away. Let me put it that way. And I think that's very unlikely. And I will say too, Jace had mentioned some about, the sort of creative deprivation at DC, and not to make this the indie podcast, but goddamn, indie comics doing some real good stuff right now. I've never been more excited to read indie. We're getting to the point that even though I'm going to give some of these DC books a shot, I think I'm buying more indie than I am anything else. These stories are exciting. The creators playing on their own playscape. Just saying, you guys should go check out some indie comics. And I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't at least plug myself as an indie comics writer. Area 51, the Helix Project, #1. We've talked about it on the show a couple times. We've brought it up as a Kickstarter. Well, boys and girls.
And it's on Comixology too right now.
It's been submitted for Comixology. It hasn't necessarily been approved, but if you want to sort of dismantle the capitalist hierarchy there, I actually have digital copies for sale on my website. So Amazon, you don't have to let Amazon take my money. DarkKnightNation.com/shop. It's in the description below. You can pick up your physical copies right here. I will also, for subscribers specifically, post Kickstarter, I am charging for signatures because I want to do right by the people that believed in the vision, by the people that came out there, had my back and supported it. For subscribers, reach out to me in DMs. There is a coupon code for all of my subscribers. So I 100% recommend you guys going to check that out. It's been a passion project. I put a lot of myself into this book. You guys know that I scrutinize books left and right. And, I won't say that I'm perfect, but I definitely brought as much of that into this book as I possibly can. I think at bare minimum, the art is top shelf. So if you're coming for anything, you guys can come for that. But it's a story that matters. Ultimately, the greatest fiction reflects reality, and that's something I certainly tried to do here. And I'll tell you what, man, for those of you that have read the book and have enjoyed issue 1, and I say this with no hyperbole, I think issue 2 is 10 times better. I think building on what was set up in issue 1, aside from the fact that I've just become more and more comfortable with the format, I think you're in for a treat. And while I'm here and I'm on my soapbox, I do want to thank everybody in the audience that did go and support the Kickstarter, that made this possible, because without you, it would not have been, including these two guys on the screen. I mean, I do also want to take the moment to publicly thank the two of you for being in my corner, for buying this book, for supporting the project, and for being honest. I mean, both of you gave me your honest opinions about the book, and they were generally good, pretty good. But I appreciate the honesty, because I'll tell you one thing, guys, as much as I would love to hear great things about this book, if it's not for you, it's not for you, and that's okay. And if I made a mistake, I want to hear about it just as much as I like talking about it. I'd want to hear about it. So thank you guys so much. And I hope you'll consider giving it a shot. Like I said, I put a lot of myself into this. Issue 2 is going to be hitting the waves pretty soon. It's already being worked on in the art capacity. Script's been done for a while, so I think you guys are in for a treat. Let's see here.
So I think Suicide Squad is next. I'll start talking about it while Dark Knight gets it back up on the screen. Suicide Squad for me, it's one of those titles where it's very lineup dependent, and I know that the lineup for this Suicide Squad is obviously heavily influenced by the James Gunn film that's upcoming. And while I think that lineup can be a lot of fun and work on screen, especially with James Gunn at the helm, it doesn't excite me in comic book form. And I'm also not a big fan of Robbie Rodriguez's work. I know a lot of people probably mostly know him from his Spider-Gwen run. But again, he's just not somebody who excites me. So I'm out on this book. I have zero plans of picking it up, and not much else to say about it beyond that.
That's fair. What about you, Boom? What are you thinking?
I think Chase sort of sums it up. Part of me, it contributes a little bit to. It's a little bit depressing that part of the whole DC movie slate, Suicide Squad got a lot of coverage there. I think a lot of people are looking forward to it. I mean, it's James Gunn. I mean, good Lord, it looks to be really cool. We're getting a Peacemaker TV series out of it, or whatever, 12, whatever it is, 8 or 12 episodes. The fact that and I mean, no disrespect to Robbie Rodriguez, but it just, I don't know. I'm just astonished that you wouldn't want to go just a little bit more, maybe B and A level for a writer for Suicide Squad. I'm just surprised, and I've not read much of Robbie Rodriguez's Spider-Gwen or what have you. Honestly, with all due respect to him, most people get by Spider-Gwen for the variant covers, not for the content. Although that's probably cruel for me to say, but that's in the spec market. Every speculator I talk to, I don't think anyone's ever read an issue of Spider-Gwen, and they're more interested in Spider-Gwenum anyway. So, but again, as a comp, I will say this to Robbie Rodriguez: impress me, show me your passion. I mean, I'm open to be impressed because I'm going to be buying this series. You better believe it. I'm going to be buying it. And the potential that you have to develop these characters outside the movie, again, make it a character-driven drama. Look to get your inspiration from Tom Taylor, not from Tom Taylor, character-driven drama. Tom Taylor's 11 issues of Suicide Squad, that was a completely character-driven story. And it led to the death of a major character, but completely character-driven. You change the actions of one character in any of those issues, you would have had a potentially different outcome. That is quality storytelling for a superhero comic, and that's very hard to pull off. And I wish him well.
Yeah, I feel so bad for the guy, though, because no matter what, this is going to have heavy editorial interference because of the movie and because of the Peacemaker TV show. I mean, you can't tell me that anybody would think that Peacemaker would have been the leader of the Suicide Squad. That is only happening because of the TV show. I'm sorry. I know that's cynical, but that's just fact. We all know it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're right. I'll say this. There are two things that do sort of catch my eye here. One of which is the talent in the background. I'm a big Court of the Owls guy. One of my favorite Batman stories of all time. I also think that just the idea of the Court of the Owls is phenomenal. Great, inventive, modern villain. Am I going to be buying this book? I still don't know. Robbie Thompson has been one of those writers who's been just kind of middling for me. I've continued to buy his Teen Titans for as long as it's been on. He picked up after Adam Glass. I thought he was doing a fine job. Nothing spectacular. So we'll see. I have a feeling that Suicide Squad might be one of those things that I wait to hear from the peanut gallery and see what everybody thinks about it before I give it a shot. But I'm just fairly indifferent about it. Not as indifferent as I am about Harley, but indifferent nonetheless. Real quick too, before we move on, I want to answer a couple of these questions regarding the book in the live chat, my book. Matt says it's in his box at Pete's shop. Can't wait to read it, bro. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you showing up to support. And I really hope you enjoy it. We'll be doing too, for those of you in the Connecticut tri-state area, we'll be doing a socially distant signing at AJ's Comics in Colchester, Connecticut. You can go to ajscomics.com for all of the information on that. I will be there pretty much all day. Again, socially distance, everybody must wear a mask. There will be hand sanitizer and a number of resources like that available to make sure things are cleanly, hygienic, and safe. So you guys should definitely show up. And Matt, seriously, man, I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Mark McKeever, when are the t-shirts coming? I assume you mean the t-shirts from the Kickstarter and whatnot. Otherwise, if anybody does want to buy t-shirts after the fact and things of that nature, click the link in the description below, DarkKnightNation.com. We have put up Pocket Watch Press merchandise, including this nifty embroidered t-shirt with other things. But regarding the Kickstarter stuff, I've been spending the better half of this week organizing everything to be sent out, including books. So the t-shirts are going to be coming along with the books and whatever other Kickstarter rewards come with the rewards tier that you contributed to. Also, Mark, thank you so much for backing the project. I appreciate the hell out of you. You've been a real voice in my corner, and I appreciate it. And so everything will be, I think I'm going to start shipping things out Monday. Tomorrow, I'm doing a little bit of a store tour to deliver books to local retailers that picked up retailer packages. But the shirts will be coming shortly. Depending on where you live in the United States, you might even get them as early as the end of this week. Who knows? Otherwise, I foresee most people getting them sometime, I would say next week for the most part. Everything's being shipped priority mail or first class, depending on how close you are. Sometimes if somebody's literally a state away, I'll go first class, but most are getting priority mail. So you should be seeing everything very soon. I hope you enjoy it. Definitely make sure to let me know what you think about it. And obviously, if you have feedback, things that can be improved upon when it comes to merchandise, the packaging, whatever, please let me know. This was the first time I've done anything like this, and there was a lot to learn. So I'd love to hear back from everybody. Tevi asked, when is the merchandise coming? I assume you might have the same question as Mark. I didn't know that you were on the Kickstarter, but in which case I'll refer to you what I just said. Otherwise, if you want to pick up merch for the HELIX project, buy copies of the HELIX project for yourself, or Dark Knight Nation merch, you can click the link in the description. Otherwise, it's going to be scrolling across the screen for you now. But back to the thing you guys actually came here for, instead of me selling myself like the whore I am. Taylor Pector says he doesn't care much for the squad. He would much rather have Secret Six. I mean, I know you're a very passionate Gail Simone Secret Six guy, and I don't blame you for it. It was a wonderful run. And I think if I were to really consider it, I would agree with you, Taylor. I just think I can't get past my own indifference. I don't know. What do you guys think? Would you prefer doing some Secret Six over the squad?
If it meant less Amanda Waller, yes. I'm not a fan of that character.
I'm a huge fan of Secret Six, and I think Secret Six is probably better suited at this point for a mini series. I like the idea of a Suicide Squad, and frankly, basing the Suicide Squad on the movie, I think is actually a good idea in this case. I'm not against it, because it gives lower tier and lesser tier DC characters some love. And because look, if Suicide Squad is successful, that's going to tell the powers that be that maybe we should give these other crazy, ridiculous characters from DC lore, because some of these characters are ridiculous. I mean, Polka Dot Man and all. I mean, good grief. I mean, some of them are just, even Peacemaker's kind of a dunce. I mean, maybe they won't make him a dunce in the comic, but to me, how you write your lowest characters, so much potential is there. I hope Chase is likely right when you talk about editorial control. I hope that there's some, if there's too much editorial control, it's not going to do good, but at least you can introduce other crazy characters. And I'm going to say this quickly, that you have to, with DC Suicide Squad, you should build on characters from DC Silver Age. So not only will you create interesting stories, but you'll also create more speculation in the spec market, and you'll increase comic book sales that way. That is something that DC writers don't do enough of. Marvel writers do it all the time, and DC writers, if they're not experienced enough and they're not familiar enough with the DC universe, what they will do is that they'll make the mistake, in my view, of insisting on creating a new character as opposed to looking back to DC history and use all that free stuff to build DC lore. I'm being selfish, but I like DC history.
It's fair. It's a fair point to make. You know, that a lot of these books could be used essentially as pipelines to get exposure to characters that haven't gotten much, or even just a pipeline to really remodernize a lot of these guys that deserve remodernization. So I think in premise it could do well. I think you're bound to get those comic book people that are hearing about the Peacemaker show and the film that are probably going to pick up the book out of nowhere. So you might get a handful of people picking up this book that might not have otherwise, and that's great exposure to these characters. But you know, I think it's shown that most of the time replicating what you see on the screen within the page often doesn't pay in dividends. I mean, we've gone at extensive lengths with Jace here, and Jace has mentioned how he thinks the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I'm beginning to think so too, has had absolutely no positive repercussion for comic book sales or for the industry at large. So who knows what will happen with that, you know? I think, let's see. So we have the Superman Red and Blue. I mean, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Like you guys, I'm excited. I think giving him the Batman Black and White treatment is well-deserved. I think it leads a lot of potential for grade A evergreen Superman stories, albeit small and digestible. I hate this cover. I'll say that. I think this cover is ugly as hell. I feel like my mediocre drawing skills could do a better job, but
yep.
It's just me, and I think it's the same person that did that Harley cover that Boom was raving over earlier. I could be wrong, but yep, it is same person. How do you guys? I mean,
the Harley cover is much. I thought the Harley cover was much better. Wow,
that's fair. I didn't think much of the Harley cover either, but I don't, like I said, I don't have much of an opinion because I don't plan on picking up the Harley book. Do either of you have anything more to say about the Superman anthology book? I know you guys spoke about it a little bit earlier.
Yeah, super excited that my boy Lee Bermejo is drawing a cover. That's the one I'll be picking up. And yeah, to your point, great that we can get some small digestible Superman stories. I think a lot of people aren't Superman fans. Manny, you know, the guy that does my podcast, the Comic Source podcast with me all the time, he wasn't a fan of Superman until he needed the right take to be pulled in. So this is an opportunity for that. And if PKJ doesn't do well on Superman, maybe they can find the next writer of Superman by something that you know, speaks to listeners from this anthology. So I am excited about it. It's sort of tangentially related to Superman. Tevia has asked a couple times in the comments about why Connor Kent Superboy is on the Suicide Squad. I think that is all to do with just trying to pull in a built-in audience. You know, a lot of the characters aren't that well known. You know, we talked about it when we talked about Suicide Squad, Peacemaker and such. So I think they're putting Connor Kent in there because he is a popular character. He does have a built-in audience. So I think that's his reason for being on the Suicide Squad. To answer that question, that's what I think anyway. But yeah, I'm excited for this one. I'll definitely be picking it up even at the $7.99 price point. But I feel like this book is specifically marketed for me. You know, I'm a huge Superman fan. Give me different takes of Superman from different writers and different artists, and I'm in for sure.
Hear me out. A Jace marketed Superman anthology where every story is Superman brushing somebody's teeth by a different writer and a different artist.
You are preaching to the choir, my man. I'm all for that.
100%. And I will say this Gary Frank cover, gorgeous. 100% the cover that I will be picking up.
Oh, it's gorgeous, and it's sort of like that technique for that with that. I don't know what they call that negative
space.
Negative space. That's fantastic. We need more hopeful stories. I mean, I always find it funny. I know PC is Batman seems to be the top character for DC, but the reality is that the heart and soul, said it before, it's Superman, and we need more Superman stories. We need more positive stories. Enough with the Batman Dark Knight, you know, repressed soul. My parents got murdered. Woeful me. Let's go beat up the cowardly criminal lot. At least with Superman, I mean, let's you know, that's all well and good, but man, we need some Superman. We need some bright. We need some light. We need some hope, and we need something that's digestible for your casual comic book fan who might wander into the shop and just want to be inspired.
Mm-hmm. You said it, man. I don't think I could follow up on that in any productive way possible. Next, we have Swamp Thing, which is a book I will definitely be checking out for myself. So, but from what I understand, I haven't read a lot of the solicits. It's not going to be Alec Holland under all that greenery. So, what's going on? I'm sure one of you guys is probably a little bit more in touch with what's going on than I am.
Not me. I've never been a fan of Swamp Thing, to be honest with you. So I'm this is not one I'm inclined to pick up. So I know nothing about it, and I never even read the solicit, to be honest.
Yeah, so it's been a long time since we've had a Swamp Thing ongoing. I think even the Scott Snyder Charles Soule, I want to say, is the last one. We did have a mini from Len Wein, the actual creator of Swamp Thing, with Kelly Jones art. But this is building off of some of those concepts that were created in the New 52 Swamp Thing series, where, you know, it's the Parliament of Trees and the Grove and Animal Man as well. Scott Snyder was writing that also. You know, it was the red and the green and so different avatars and death and the animal kingdom and all that. So there have been any number of Swamp Things over the years. In fact, in the Endless Winter event that's going on right now in DC, we have a Swamp Thing, but obviously it's way before Alec Holland's lifetime. So this is building on that. Ram V is an excellent writer. So I expect this to be good. All that being said, kind of like Boom, I'm just not a fan of the character. I'm actually surprised we're getting a Swamp Thing series, because the sales generally aren't that good. I have to wonder if it's all about the IP and the fact that the Swamp Thing series that started off on the DC streaming app is now over on the CW, and we haven't heard if there's going to be a second season of it yet or not. So I just wonder if they're trying to gauge interest, or maybe it's just the fact of Ram V's talent. You know, he pitched a Swamp Thing, series, and they bought it because it's such a great idea. And if that's the case, great. But even the best Swamp Thing idea, I'm just not a fan of the character. So I won't be on it. But that being said, I expect it to be quality. If you're a fan of the character, if you're a fan of Supernatural corner of DCU, magic, that sort of thing, I would recommend this just based on the strength of the artistic team. Because not only is Ram V excellent, Mike Perkins is a great choice for artists on this, because he's very detailed in his artwork. So when you talk about drawing roots, when you talk about drawing horror, when you talk about drawing plants, I think Perkins is a great choice. So that's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, this was the first book that was announced post DC Futures Date that I put on my pull list. I'm definitely getting this book. I'm a big Swamp Thing guy. Alan Moore's Swamp Thing is absolutely brilliant. I've been fighting against my demons to not get the Alan Moore absolute Swamp Thing, because boy does this broke boy want it, but I know I shouldn't. Ram V, like you said, is a talent. He's young, he's hungry. I think he's going to leave a mark in a big bad way, and part of me was definitely bummed to not be picking up his Justice League Dark, because it's now a 10-page backup in what is inevitably going to be a horrible Justice League run. This just looks like great. And the cool thing about Swamp Thing to me is that Alec Holland under Swamp Thing never mattered too much. Alec Holland was a lens for Swamp Thing stories, more so than Alec Holland was an involved part of what makes the character important. So I'm all for this new direction with Swamp Thing. Like you said, Mike Perkins is going to do a great job. He has this really interesting methodology of detailing, using thin line work and using solid spotted blacks. So I think it's going to be a great book. 100%. Also, Mr. DC Comics, I appreciate you filling us in here. He says that in Justice League Dark, the OG Swamp Thing sacrificed himself to help Wonder Woman and Zatanna defeat Upside Down Man, aka Hecate. That's interesting. I'd call you out on spoilers, but I'm behind anyways, so I guess that's my own fault. And I don't even know how long ago that happened. So let's see here.
It was last month, I believe.
Okay, so it was fairly recent.
Fairly recent. Yeah.
So this Teen Titans Academy, I'm not going to lie, has actually caught my interest a little bit. It also doesn't hurt that I grew up watching the Teen Titans animated series, and Red X is a product of that. So it does tug on my nostalgia a bit. The second thing that really draws me is Raphael Sandoval's art. I've been talking about this guy for years. Brilliant artist, incredible character acting, some of the best character acting in comics. Hyper fluid. I think he's just as good and in a very similar way to the beloved Jorge Jimenez. Not knocking on Jorge because he's brilliant. I think Rafa is equally as brilliant and deserves just as much praise. I haven't learned much about the pitch of this story, but I will say that I'm definitely considering buying it in a world where I was definitely not going to a couple of months ago. What do you guys think about this Teen Titans Academy book?
Well, I can tell you that I think it's an obvious thing to do, and I think they're doing it. Marvel's doing it with Strange Academy. DC's doing it with Teen Titans Academy. This is a way to they've already had their Gotham Academy, but Teen Titans Academy, I think it's more of the same thing. In fact, you can bet dollars to donuts we're going to be getting a Gotham Academy series at some point. There'll be a crossover between Titans Academy and Gotham Academy, I predict. These are going to be where they develop the younger talents, the younger heroes. They're going to be hoping at some point for a series out of this, a TV series. This has developed the next legacy generation written all over it. And I think it's a good idea. I like the fact that they introduced Red X. They got Red X from the series. So as a speculator, they're doing the right thing. They're introducing past characters that are popular from other media into this. He's front and center on the cover. That is smart marketing. Look, we can put corporations down, but every now and then AT&T, they do something right. I mean, you got the spec market. I mean, use it. You got the history with these characters. Use it. I mean, you want to draw attention to a new generation of fans? Absolutely. Use the existing characters you have that have some past media affiliation and exploit it. Because as a comic book reader, I'm going to be picking this up, and speculators are going to be picking this up. I predict this is going to be near the top 10 of sales.
Yeah, I agree with Boom saying this is built for speculators. It's built right in. Introduce new characters, and we've seen how Strange Academy is blown up over at Marvel. Like he said, Red X, he's spot on, finally getting him in a comic. All that being said, these kind of books, I'm kind of over them. When they first came out, like I'll point to Morning Glories from Nick Spencer as kind of the prototypical one that came out, and kids at a boarding school, strange happenings going on, getting into hijinks, whatever. It worked, but at this point, that story formula is kind of tired for me, so I don't go in for them. So I won't be picking this up beyond maybe an issue or two. If I hear some spec things, I like to dabble once in a while. And I'm a huge fan of Rafa Sandoval as well, especially his Green Lantern stuff. I think he does cosmic stuff real well. I don't know how his art is going to play in a more mundane atmosphere like a school. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm sure I'll peruse through the previews copies when I get them, but I don't plan on picking it up or putting it on my pull list or anything.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think the more I hear about it, the more interesting it is. The one thing that catches me off guard is that there's just a random television writer coming on to do the book. And again, that's not to say that he's not going to be good. I'm not going to be closed-minded enough to say that, but
he does have history with the DC universe, though. Like he wrote a couple of the DC universe animated movies. I haven't met him or talked to him, but Manny, my partner, as I mentioned, he's interviewed him several times for DC animated things, and says he's very passionate about the DC characters. But whether that translates to the comic page, yet to be seen.
Yeah, and there's also something to be said about knowing the format, right? I mean, obviously there are similarities to writing comic scripts to writing scripts for visual media like television and film. I mean, I've definitely dabbled in both, but there is something very specific. I mean, there are a number of specific things that these TV guys do have to acknowledge going into writing a comic book script, because you're writing for the panel, you're not writing for the scene. It's a very particular way to go about it. In comics, you can hang on an image for as long as you want. Film, not so much. Singular images are fleeting. You get 60 plus frames a second now with modern technology, so they matter less and less. Regarding concept, and I was thinking the same thing that Taylor Pector brings up here in the chat, is that he feels like it's similar to Geoff Johns' 2003 run, just without the Young Justice characters. I agree. It does certainly remind me of it. But the thing that I think puts this out, or at least defines it away from Geoff Johns' Green Lantern, Jesus, Teen Titans, is that the first class of the Academy are entirely unknown. I mean, even when you had Geoff Johns' Teen Titans run, which I love, they were known characters. It was Tim Drake, Cassie Sandsmark, Connor Kent. I mean, Beast Boy was one of the mentor figures, Cyborg, Starfire, and you had a couple characters flow in and out, but and I forgot Bart Allen. That was kind of your rotating roster for the most part, or your most consistent part of the roster. So I think, the idea that we're getting an almost brand new cast of characters for the most part, aside from the mentor figures, is actually really interesting. And the more we talk about it, the more I'm kind of selling myself on it. So I'm here for it. Let's see. I mean, we've talked about Superman on Philip Kennedy Johnson on Superman in Action. I find it interesting that DC is persistent on having one writer do both titles when they're not doing that on something like Batman. But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing as long as the vision is consistent. Unfortunately, the first go at it with Bendis was not the way to go about it. But I'm definitely going to be putting Action and Superman back on my pull list for the first time in a long time. I have faith in Johnson, especially given that he now has the opportunity to play in his own space versus a tie-in, series to a big event or some other one shot where he's constrained. He's proven to do well with long sprawling epics. If that's something he has in store for Superman, as of right now, I trust the vision and I'm going to give it a shot. Do you guys have anything to add about Philip Kennedy Johnson, his Superman in Action comics run?
So the most interesting or curious part of this for me is the Midnighter backup. When I think Superman, I definitely don't think Midnighter. So that's the backup in the Action Comics run written by Becky Cloonan and Michael Conrad, the same team that's bringing us Wonder Woman. So I guess I'm curious about that. I guess we'll see. Phil Hester's handling the art on the Action issue. Phil Hester's art for me, it's not dynamic enough for superheroes. I mean, I love Phil and I think his stuff is really great in kind of slice of life stuff and crime noir, even horror it's suited for, but I don't know how I'm going to like it on Superman. So I guess we'll wait and see. I'm with you, Boom, on the jury's still out on PKJ. We'll just wait and see. The Superman title has a backup called Tales of Metropolis by Sean Lewis, a very kind of green writer, I'd say. He has done some things specifically for Aftershock. I've interviewed him. He is a creator who does have talent, but I mean, this is a high profile gig, backup in the Superman comics. So we'll see. Art is by Sami Basri. I think his art is done well, but it's a Jimmy Olsen story. So at least it's, related to Superman. Makes more sense than the Midnighter one to me. So I just don't know. The biggest part for me is I'm taking a chance on Philip Kennedy Johnson writing good Superman stories. And I have to admit, I can't think of anything I've read by PKJ other than things in anthologies. And it was never a situation where I read the story and went back, a second time to look at the credits to see, because his writing impressed me. So I'm going in with an open mind. At least it's not Bendis. We'll see how it works. But the fact that I'm going to be paying $4.99 for these books, and I don't know the writer, he doesn't have a pedigree. It's not sitting that well with me. I much rather would have had Venditti or Tom Taylor or Mark Waid. Then I'm not feeling so bad about spending $5. Those guys have a track record. They've written books that I've enjoyed. So I'm not saying it's not going to work, but it's a wait and see. And DC has to know that the Bendis experiment on Superman didn't work. They have to be, aware of that at this point. There's been enough complaints. The sales have been god awful. So you would think this would be one of those books that one of the few that they'd put a name on, like, throw us a bone, DC. Don't, after a terrible run from Bendis, put somebody who's such a a question mark on this flagship character.
I
I
just-
have to question that decision.
Just regarding you saying DC has to know Bendis on Superman was a failure, does this look like DC knows Superman was a failure?
No, what that looks like to me is that DC's paying Bendis a hell of a lot of money because Didio gave Bendis a sweetheart of a deal, and you know they got to pay him to do something, and maybe they're hoping, well, let's take him off Superman and put him on something else, and maybe we can at least get that initial bump before people realize that it's garbage and go to something else. Put him on a known property, as opposed to like if they had thrown him on a Young Justice or a Naomi or some like Teen Lantern or some other crappy character that he's created recently, it's not going to move the needle as much as putting him on a flagship. But they didn't put him on Batman, did they?
Oh, don't worry. You'll see all of his shit characters in Justice League. Don't worry. He'll find a way to include them. The royalty money machine never stops. Although I will say to less Bendis's credits and more to his collaborator, people seem to have received Naomi pretty well. I didn't read it, so I don't have a lot to say about it.
I give all the credit for that to David F. Walker.
Yeah, I would too, because
Jamal Campbell art was excellent as well.
Also true. I think Jamal Campbell is one of the best working superhero artists in comics today. I mean, he's incredible. Such energy, such life to his work. I mean, let's talk about the Justice League. No, absolutely not. This was, I think, one of the biggest oversights DC possibly could have made. This was an absolute shock to me, considering the absolute mediocrity of his Superman in Action comics. It is, most comic book critics tend not to be very hard. I've said that is commonly my criticism, because I'm a critical guy. It is my common criticism of my peers in the space that they often are satisfied with mediocrity. And even Bendis' Superman has been getting flamed left and right by reviewers, and DC's response is to put him on Superman. Maybe your hypothesis is correct, Jace, but this, I mean, first of all, this art looks incredible, but putting Bendis on this, giving Bendis this much control, by far the greatest mistake DC could have possibly made. Probably far worse than putting him on Superman. So
I think DC always undervalues the impact of the Justice League comic. When Jeff Johns was on it, New 52, it did great. It was tied in. It was central to the DCU, and it did really well. And then Rebirth comes along. They put Tony Daniel on it, both writing and drawing. Of course, he can't keep up to the schedule. Sales tank, and nobody's reading it. Nobody cares. They followed that up with Brian Hitch, and it's kind of the same thing. Delay after delay after delay. The work is mediocre at best. Nobody's reading it. Nobody cares. Then they bring Scott Snyder on, and he brings it back to the center of the DCU in a way that even Jeff Johns' run on Justice League wasn't. It drove everything, and the argument could be made it's still driving the DC universe with Death Metal, because that story started in Justice League with the Doom Patrol and all that, the Year of the Villain, all that kind of stuff. So here we go. After it being so important, and whether you liked Scott Snyder's run or not, whether you thought it was high quality, it was at the center of the DC universe. It was driving things, and you go from that to once again putting a creator whose work has been mediocre at best lately on the title. I don't understand. We know Green Arrow is going to be leading the team. What? I mean, I like Green Arrow as much as the next guy, but he's a street level character. He has no business leading the Justice League. Wonder Woman, I mentioned earlier, she's off fighting the gods in the god domain. She's gone. Hippolyta? No, that doesn't work for me. She doesn't work for me as an active, superhero who's out there fighting. Naomi's on the team. Wait, what? She hasn't earned that place. She should be over at the Teen Titans Academy. This just has disaster written all over it. You just hear, like, the more I hear about it, the worse I think it's. Like, when I think it can't get any worse, DC announces something else. And yeah, I expect it to be absolutely horrible. I'm staying away 100%. And I'm putting it out there right now. Even if Mark Brooks does a variant cover, I'm not buying it. God damn it.
God bless you for the self-restraint. Oh, God. I mean, Boom, I know you are Bendis's #1 fan. What do you think about this book?
Oh, I actually have a working theory on this, and I'm going to arrogantly make a prediction, and I think I'm going to be right on this. And I mentioned this to you guys in the direct in our chats before, but I think this is. I still think Bendis is hell bent on making Leviathan the next the Magneto for the DC universe, and I really do think. I think that's why I think Bendis was given his choice, and I think it's curious what do Black Adam and Hippolyta have in common? Well, they're leaders of nations. And Leviathan is now a leader of a nation. He bought Malkovia when he was Leviathan. I think that's what we're going toward. Obviously, Naomi is there you notice she's been aged up. She's drawn to look older. Her entire storyline took place over the span of only 2 days, and yet now she's grown it's like she's aged years. But obviously, this is they're developed a Naomi TV show. That's not surprising. Green Arrow and Black Canary, they don't have a home. They don't have a series. They're not particularly. They don't get a lot of legwork anyway. But they were in Leviathan. I think this is just going to be Bendis's way of being able to do whatever he wants. It's his own sandbox, and this is all moving toward. I think it's going to be moved towards something toward Leviathan. If there's one failure that Bendis has, is his number one failure. Well, I mean, he's got a lot of them, but he hasn't had a single notable villain since he's been to DC. They've all been abject failures. Rogolzar, Invisible Mafia, Red Mist, Red Cloud, or whatever the heck that is. They've all been failures.
What about Discount White Martian?
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't even know his name. That tells you I have been criticizing Bendis for years now. I don't even know his new shit character's name. You've burnt me out that much.
Yeah, no, it's like I said, it's very underwhelming. It's just going to be disappointing. What frustrates me is that if this was any other writer, this to me should be exciting. It should be exciting. I mean, Black Adam, Hippolyta. I mean, I actually Hawk Girl, Black Canary, Green Arrow, Batman, Superman. This has a lot of potential if you look at characters, but Bendis doesn't know how to write character-driven dramas. He doesn't get the plots. He comes up with dumb plots, and he forces the characters to move. He doesn't understand the dialogue for the characters. He hasn't written a single series where the dialogue's been any good. Even Naomi, which has been relatively well received. In actual fact, I hate to say it, but I'm going to be an outlier. Naomi 1 was an awful issue. The dialogue is terrible in Naomi. It just is. To the extent that it isn't, it's only I expect it's because of David Walker's influence, as Jace previously mentioned. So, and I actually think that Naomi Volume 2, one of the reasons why it continues to be delayed is probably because somebody at AT&T read it and said, "Who wrote this? Oh, why don't we fire him? Oh, we got a contract to pay him what?" I mean, can you imagine being a fly on the wall with somebody at AT&T questioning Dan Didio's motives? Maybe that's why Didio got fired in the first place. I don't know.
How many copies of Naomi #1 do you own?
I own one. I own the first one. I own the third and the third printing. But I am a speculator.
You would have jumped on that.
Well, I do. I do have the Naomi series. I do. Yeah.
This is just. First of all, there's always been like this common thing going around that before X or before Y, Bendis was a master of dialogue. Let me tell you something, man. Bendis was never good at dialogue. Never. Was
I'm actually never a Bendis fan either. I never understood what the fascination with his work is.
I like his Daredevil. I like the early Miles Morales arc. Bendis blows dialogue out of his ass, and it makes sense because when he came on to Superman, literally all he talked about was stuff coming out of the Flash's ass. It is insane. These characters are all going to sound the same. They're going to sound exactly the same. You want to know why? Because they're going to sound like Bendis. He has no idea how to write individual characters unless he creates them. And even then, every other character sounds like his original character. I mean, god damn, he sucked at writing the League when they appeared in Superman. What made you think he was going to write them better in their own book? And it's a shame because David Marquez is a brilliant artist.
Yeah.
Stunning layouts,
Yeah.
great character designs, solid character acting. And why the actual hell Bendis continues to convince talented artists to work with him is beyond me. It's ridiculous. I mean, I've been going off recently on Bendis because I was going through and reading all of Ultimate Spider-Man and even the stuff that he is heralded for. I mean, Ultimate Spider-Man is considered the pinnacle of his career. Surprise. Not great. Not consistent by any stretch of the imagination. Literally, read the first arc of his Ultimate Spider-Man. It is literally a grown-ass man trying his hardest to sound like a 90s teenager and failing abysmally. It's insane.
The first arc tells the story, the same story that Stan Lee and Steve Ditko told in one issue that Bendis took like 8 issues to tell.
Aside from that, I mean,
fell asleep.
You're not wrong. It's boring as shit, and the dialogue was unbearable. It was unbearable. And also, you're supposed to be upset with Peter. At the end of his introduction, he's got to have something to come back from. I hated Peter Parker at the end of that first arc. I didn't care what he did. I really didn't care. I was like, you could go back, freaking cross the source wall and bring him into the DC universe and throw that old man in a fucking Lazarus pit, bring him back, kiss him goodnight. I don't care. This is all just kind of going towards this one thing, is that this was a mistake. And I'll say this, when we're on the topic of creators that are incredibly kind, incredibly friendly, it is Bendis. Bendis seems like a sweet guy. Don't get me wrong. As a human being, he's done a lot with in terms of he's done some charity work. He's done a lot of benefit stuff. He's helped a lot of young creators come up. But that doesn't stop me from being objective about his work. It's bad. It's garbage. Guy doesn't know how to plot, has no idea how to pace. His dialogue is trash. I don't care what you say. It was almost always trash. I love his Daredevil. His dialogue was some of the worst. This was one of the worst parts about his Daredevil, and I love that Daredevil run.
Yeah, pacing is the hardest thing to get right in comics, and it's the thing he's worst at. 100%.
It's horrible. I could keep going. I mean, just all of the structural flaws in Bendis's writing. We're in a world where more than anything, people care about character. Bendis can't do character. He does one character, and that's it. And it's him. It's Brian Michael Bendis as Superman.
Yeah,
so
he can't do team titles. His Young Justice was absolutely awful, and there's way too many members on the Justice League, and he there's no way he's going to do them justice. It would be at least 24 to 36 issues for him to be able to complete a story arc, and he never did finish. There wasn't a single story of Young Justice in the 24 issues. It had no plot. There literally was no plot. There wasn't a plot. I challenge anyone to tell me what the plot was in Young Justice. Good luck. I'm kidding. I would never burden anybody with that nightmare. It's nonsensical. There is no plot. They go from universe to universe. And the only thing he managed to do worse than write Young Justice was he actually managed to screw up what Earth 3 actually was and the rules for Earth 3, because he screwed up the crime syndicate on Earth 3. Wrote them all off as wrote them as being alive when we knew that they were dead. Changed the rules on some of the reverse of good versus bad. Anyways, I could go on, but no, it's just not good. Not on my pull list.
Yeah, let's move on before Bendis calls me and starts yelling at me.
Jesus, yeah. Or before I go off on the guy again, because Jesus Christ. And I will say this, man, like, I know there are people in the audience that are enjoying what Bendis is doing, and that's cool, man. Like I'm not shitting on you for liking what you like. I know Taylor says he likes his Jinx World stuff, and that's really cool. But man,
25 years old.
Huh?
It's 25 years old. Jinx is Jinx, or does he mean he means his probably his powers.
I think it just means his Jinx World stuff in general, but it's, I mean, just from people have to take in mind as well when I air my criticisms, I'm an aspiring writer.
I think we've talked about how nice a guy Bendis is. I think we've done that enough. I mean, we're talking about his work now, and I'm not going to apologize for not liking his work.
Yeah. No, it's fair. I mean, like I said, I'm not apologizing for it. I'm just gonna make the point of saying that even, me going at his work like this is because I'm looking at it from somebody who's trying to be the next generation. I'm trying to one up these guys. And when I see people of particular merit or of particular notoriety doing this bad, it's almost offensive. It's actually almost offensive. I feel like at this point we are running kind of long in definite part to me being a rambler. I feel like we can't walk away without at least mentioning Batman. I have very little to say. I think this cover looks great. I think the prospect of a Scarecrow arc is great. I'm also not buying this book because Tynion's Batman has been nothing but mediocre. His pacing has been garbage, and I feel like he speaks much when he talks about his run and his plans for the run. I'm much more enticed than when I'm actually reading it, and that's a problem. That's all I have to say.
It's Tynion, and he has talent. That's the most frustrating thing. His Batman run hasn't been very good, so I don't know. I might check it out. At least it's a different Batman villain. I'm not 100% convinced. I am a big Jorge Jimenez fan. As far as detective goes, Mariko Tamaki, Dan Mora. Dan Mora is an incredible artist. He's finally getting his due. Mariko Tamaki has been wildly inconsistent for me over the last couple of years. So I'm just not sure. I would have preferred to see Peter J. Tomasi stay on the book. So I'll probably give him a try. It's one of those, I'm just not sure. Buy a couple issues, see how it goes, and go from there. And then I'll loop in Batman versus Superman because it's, again, a Batman book. Gene Luen Yang, I loved his Superman run. He had a very brief run on Action, was great. I think he's a very talented writer. Superman Smashes the Klan was a great book earlier this year, and now he's getting a chance to bring Batman in. So I guess we'll see. That'll be another one where it's kind of I'll pick up a couple issues and see how it goes, because Batman Superman usually isn't a very big seller. Again, I think it's DC trying to get more people to pick up Superman by using the Batman hook, basically. So we'll see how that one goes.
Yeah, I would add that I think that Batman Superman, I predict Batman Superman by Gene Luen Yang will be probably one of my favorite picks. It's got all the hallmarks. Gene Luen Yang is so underrated. His Superman series, like with the Chinese Superman there, what is his name? Conal, forget what his name was. Conan Khan. Anyways, he did a great Superman series, and the premise of Batman Superman is I love it. It's a glimpse into a different multiverse, parallel lives of Man of Steel and Dark Knight. I think it's right up his alley. I'm really looking forward to it. And Mariko Tamaki on Detective, that is a Mariko Tamaki's Wonder Woman, I think, has been was serviceable, but I would still say sort of missed the point on the character. But then again, it's, I don't know. At some point, I'm hoping, will Mariko Tamaki write anything that I will actually like? I just don't know. I figure she's 0 for 9. So, maybe the 10th one will be the kicker. It's sort of like asking 10 women to sleep with you, only 10% say yes, but it's that 10th one you're looking for. You know what I mean? Like, is there going to be something good that she writes that I'm actually going to enjoy? We'll see. But as for just a couple, the Wonder Woman. I love the fact that on Wonder Woman they're using the logo style from the New 52, which was my favorite Wonder Woman logo style, written by Becky Cloonan. I love that the backup feature is by Jordi Belair, Adventures of a Young Diana. I think that's needed. I'm really looking forward to what Becky Cloonan brings to Wonder Woman and the backup features. I'm really hoping to be impressed with that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that Wonder Woman title as well. I already mentioned Catwoman earlier from Ram V. I'm very excited about that one coming back. I think we mentioned Tom Taylor's Nightwing. Expect that to be very good. I talked about Flash as well. Jeremy Adams, never heard the name, but I guess we'll see. Is it Barry Allen? Is it Wally West? So that's an interesting one. We also have Sensational Wonder Woman #1 from Stephanie Phillips, art by Megan Hetrick, who has a very stylized kind of art. And I expect that to be good. But what I don't know is that an ongoing? Is it just a one of? I know they also announced a digital first Wonder Woman, so that might even be the digital first.
I think that is the digital. The Sensational one is the digital, okay. I believe.
Gotcha. Yeah, and then the other solicitations are American Vampire, Batman Black and White 4. So those aren't ongoing. We still have Batman Catwoman from Tom King and Clay Mann, which we only have seen the first issue, which I enjoyed. So that's still coming out. And then I mentioned it earlier, the Black Label Harley Quinn book, which is in the White Knight sort of corner of the DCU. We've got the final issue of Batman versus Ra's al Ghul, written by Neil Adams. I don't read anything Neil Adams writes because, frankly, it's garbage.
Yeah.
Man couldn't write his way out of a paper bag.
Yeah.
He couldn't write down a pizza order. He couldn't write down a phone number. Terrible writer. You want to talk about no plot? Try to read Batman Odyssey sometime. It's got zero plot. It is absolutely horrible. G. Willow Wilson continues to write The Dreamy Waking Hours. That's been really great. We have the final issue of The Green Lantern Season 2 from Grant Morrison and the best work of Liam Sharp's career. Joker, Harley, Criminal Sanity, I mentioned earlier, from Cami Garcia. Highly recommend that. Best Harley book I've ever read. There's a new Man-Bat miniseries coming out. Why is still the only question I have. Really, people coming for a Man-Bat miniseries?
Because you demanded it.
Yeah, right. Because nobody wanted it. Here's Man-Bat. I will say the other history of the DC universe. The first issue was so good by John Ridley, absolutely spectacular. So the third issue is coming out in March. Really excited for that. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about the Superman anthology. John Ridley has a Superman story in there. I'm very excited. John Ridley is a very, very talented writer. So I'm really excited to see his take on Superman. Rorschach, I know a lot of people don't like Tom King. A lot of people don't like the fact that they think DC stole the Watchmen license from Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. And so they won't buy this book. But I've enjoyed the first 3 issues. We also have from Tom King and Mitch Gerrits and Doc Shaner, Strange Adventures. So there are still some books coming out that people are enjoying and have been liking. But we mainly focused on kind of the new stuff, and so much of it is just an unknown or sounds like garbage to us, and it's unfortunate. And the other thing, I know we're running long on time, but I want to for sure bring it up because somebody asked in the comments earlier, where's Tomasi? Where's Venditti? Where's Dan Jurgens? Where's these writers that we've come to know and love and expect great work from? We do know there are other books coming, so maybe they're coming in April. There's even books that have been announced that aren't here. Where's the Wonder Girl series that was announced? I'm drawing a blank on it's Joelle Jones who's writing it. Where's her series? Where's Aquaman? We don't know for sure there's going to be an Aquaman book, but it was rumored. What about Red Hood? Red Hood has a future state story. Right now, once Libdell finally left, we thought it was going to end, but instead we're getting a 2-part story from Sean Martinborough, which really surprised me. He's mostly known as an artist, but the first issue of his run was pretty good. We're getting the second issue this next week. But is DC going to commit to Sean Martinborough as a writer? Are we going to get more Red Hood? Who knows? So there's still a lot of unknowns. There's still the new kind of PR guy, Albert Ching, has been tweeting that hey, don't worry, more stuff is coming. But who knows? Where's Tim Drake? Where's Supergirl? Kara Zor-El. A lot of questions, a lot of creators that are missing, a lot of characters that are missing. So, Who knows? Oh, and then I can't not mention Jeffrey Thorne and his Green Lantern series that's starring John Stewart, that's going to be coming out. That doesn't start till April as well. That's missing in these solicits. And the reason I bring it up is because it was a big deal when it kind of broke about how much Jeffrey Thorne apparently hates Hal Jordan. Like, this is vitriol to the level of you think we're hard on Bendis? You think I'm hard on Pamela Lyford? Go read the stuff that Jeffrey Thorne says about Hal Jordan, and DC puts him on a Green Lantern book. Granted, John Stewart is starring in the book and not Hal Jordan, but you still would think. And it was a big stink. And Jeffrey Thorne came out on some forum and said, hey, I separate my opinions as a fan from my work as a writer. I can be professional, but I can't help but think, okay, even if that's the case, if you have to write a character that you despise personally, yeah, you can get over that. But what kind of passion are you going to bring to it? What kind of interesting take are you going to bring to it? So I really question that decision. I don't know Jeffrey Thorne. I've never met him. He comes from the television side of things too. He's never worked on any superhero stuff, but he's a big comic fan, apparently, enough to have the opinion of that Hal Jordan is the worst character ever created. I mean, that guy said this basically. So I really question that, DC. I'm like, what the hell are you doing? So again, we know there's more titles coming, but there's a lot more that we still don't know. So, I'm sure we'll be back here next year, next spring, talking about, well, here's what we said back in December, right before Christmas, and now here's the reality. Who knows where DC will be then? We'll know a lot more by then for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, and this is an accurate representation of DC smiling at that $5 price point that they're about to make some extra money from.
For sure.
I mean, just to comment on some of those other books you'd mentioned in very brief capacity, Batman, Superman, I'm for it. Gene Luen Yang is a passionate writer. He cares about these characters. Like you said, he wrote a really, really solid YA Superman Smashes the Klan. I was also enjoying his Terrifics while he was on it. I'll probably give the book a shot. Regarding Detective, I will be trying Dark Detective during Future State, mostly because I want to support the Outsiders and the Grifters story in there. But it is also to gauge how I think Tamaki might do on Detective, and that will very much make the decision for me as to whether or not I continue to pick up Detective Comics post Future State. I, like you, Jace, am a big Dan Mora guy. I've been calling for Dan Mora on Batman for years, and so I'm giving Dark Detective a try, partly for him. Wonder Woman is one of those things that I've just been burned a lot with her lately. I've given a lot of Wonder Woman runs a try in the very recent future to be disappointed more than I have been elated. So on that, honestly, it's going to be one of those books that I'll probably wait to see what Boom has to say about Wonder Woman. He knows more about Wonder Woman than I ever will. So if he stands by the Becky Cloonan Wonder Woman run, I'll likely give it a shot. I think she's a fantastic artist. I haven't been exposed to her as a writer very much, but I think that just her being in the industry for so long, working with the writers that she's worked with, she's got to have picked up something. So I'm certainly not pessimistic about it. And I mean, Green Lantern, I'm kind of in the same camp as you, Jace. It's certainly disheartening to hear what he says about Hal. I'm very much all for a John Stewart-led Green Lantern book. Whether or not this guy can kind of separate his biases from his work is another thing. It also doesn't help, again, that he's another writer coming from TV with no experience working in the format. So, all in all, I think for me, if I'm going to summarize how I'm feeling about the I honestly just forgot the name of the initiative, Infinite Frontier. It's all kind of up in the air. I obviously my instinct is to be a little bit skeptical, a little bit pessimistic. It's just who I am. There's just not a lot here that immediately jumps out at me and says, Trev, you're going to like this. There is also that factor that there's no doubt that they're going to be rolling out more books come April, come May, come June. They always start these new publishing initiatives with their more relatively money-friendly characters, so there's no doubt that we're going to be getting something. We know Venditti's been working on a dream project for a decent amount of time now, so that's bound to come out eventually. Hot take, I think Tomasi's going to go elsewhere for a while. He's not, I don't think he's exclusive anymore. I think DC's been burning their bridge with him for a long time now. They haven't been giving him the shot to tell the stories that he wants to tell. And it's very clear in books like Detective Comics, they're not giving him the platform he deserves. I think there's a good chance that he goes elsewhere, whether it's indie or Marvel. I don't know. I'm going to follow him. It's just in general, it's just nebulous for me. And DC has just burned me so much in the last couple of years that I'm a little bit more apt to step away and wait and listen rather than giving books a shot. Boom. How are you generally feeling about, Jesus, I don't even remember what it's called.
Infinite Forever. No, look at that. Infinite Frontier. Can't even get the damn name right.
Well, no, we'll have to see. The jury is still out. I mean, I'll generally stay positive, but I do openly wonder, to build on what Jace was saying, that I do think that where Venditti is, Mark Waid is, those are the guys that, or Tomasi or whatever, those are the ones that they're working on something. I still say Mark Waid's working on something. I actually, part of me wants to think this whole Philip Kennedy Johnson thing is misdirection, and that it's actually going to be Mark Waid, because it really was depressing to hear that PKJ is going to be working on this this epic Superman run. That's exactly what Mark Waid should be working on. So I like to think that Mark Waid either has a separate project or they're working on something really, really big. I just can't, I don't know. Maybe it's all smoke and mirrors, but I can't believe that Mark Waid would come over to DC. I mean, and not, he's working on something. I just refuse to believe he's not.
I think you're missing something major though. What's a book that's out right now that we haven't gotten solicited for post Future State that has a potentially a Superman or Superman analogous character in it?
What? What?
It's written by your favorite writer in comics right now, Brian Michael Bendis.
You think
Legion? Legion. Waid very well could be prepping to do a Legion run.
Well, yeah, I just said he's already done that already. That's why
he's already done Superman too.
Yeah, but not the
he's never written his own Superman series.
Yeah, but that's semantics, though. He's done Superman in numerous.
But it matters to him. But the point is, it matters to him. He was promised to be on Superman titles. Yeah. Got the rug pulled out from under him. Yeah. For Morrison of all people, and he that's a bucket list thing for him. So, I mean, I don't know. That's another one that's missing from those solicits. Legion. I hope you're right, Boom. It would be the greatest fake in the history of comics if it's not PKJ that it ends up being Mark Waid. I don't expect it to happen. PKJ's on there for at least half a year, if not longer. But yeah, hopefully it ends up in the hands of Waid at some point. I'd love to see that. As far as the initiative overall, I'll just say this. I've never been less excited for a publishing initiative from DC than I am for this one. DCU, that initiative, you guys remember that was probably the low one on my totem pole before this. Now Infinite Frontier is the lowest of the low. I kept saying on the podcast when we were talking about Future State, the thing I want to know about DC is what comes after, what comes in March. Now that I know, I wish I didn't know, because the possibility that could it be something good, something to get me excited. I'm going to be buying less DC comics than ever. People that are personal friends of mine aren't on books. Books that I want aren't there. The books that I am excited about are question marks. What if the Crime Syndicate book is horrible? I won't be on there past 2 issues. I'm telling you right now, as much as I love the Crime Syndicate. Yeah, it's super up in the air, but to your point, you've mentioned it several times, Dark Knight. I got plenty of other indie comics to spend my money on right now. Indie is where it's at. There's so many great books out there. And I've been spending more and more on Marvel lately. They've really rebounded since CB Cebulski came on and stopped constantly rebooting with number ones. Although there is a rumor going around that they're going to be doing a refresh this year after the current Phoenix storyline that's going on in the Avengers by Jason Aaron. Apparently, the climax of that story is supposed to destroy a bunch of the Marvel universe, and they're going to have to do some kind of reset on reality. And the word that Tom Brevoort used in the panel, where all these rumors are coming from, was rebirth. Well, we know they're not going to use the term rebirth because that's been done across the street. So they'll come up with something, but I'm okay with them. I'm okay. It's CB Cebulski's been there, like I said, for a while now, and he's kind of righted the ship. And I'd be okay with them rebooting or refreshing and starting with new number ones. It's been long enough. They're not doing it once a year anymore. If they do it every 3 or 4 years, we kind of know that that's just kind of par for the course at this point. So I'd be okay with it. But yeah, a lot of great Marvel books. I'm reading more Marvel than ever these days.
Yeah, fair assessment. I mean, my only prediction is I think Mark Waid could very much be doing a Legion of Superhero story, and I think that Legion of Superhero story is actually going to do the inverse of what Bendis did. I think that's going to set up for a potential Superman run down the line. Because
maybe Wade's going to write Bratman, the Damian.
Oh boy. But yeah, I mean, what you were saying, at the end of the day, it's funny that no matter how sort of bummed I might be about not buying as much DC as I've done in the past, there's not a lack of good content out there in comics. Like you said, Indie's been doing great. Image, Boom, AWA Upshot, so the little publisher called Pocket Watch Press, good people, know them personally. So no, there's not a lack of content. I think it's certainly unfortunate that the future of DC is nebulous, and it's almost making me feel worse that you guys aren't trying to convince me to be more positive, although you probably do take a more positive spin than I do. I very much expected to be the one to be like, F this, and you guys to be like, Trev, you're just being an asshole. But not today, folks. So
honestly, my best hope is that this does fail spectacularly and it causes Pamela Lyford to I don't want her to lose her job. I would never wish that on somebody, especially in this current economy. But just move her to another department, get her out, get her away from any control over DC Comics. Move her on to Warner Brothers, move her to something else, kick her up, fail upwards, Pam. Go get a raise and be in charge of some department at AT&T. Get her away from the comics. She doesn't like comics. She's been on record of saying she doesn't like comics, and she's in charge of DC Comics. Makes no sense. Please, if this does fail, that could be a silver lining. She's the devil.
You heard it here, folks. Jace is opening up his marriage to Pamela Lyford, and
anybody who's here who listens to my podcast knows that I constantly rake her over the coals. And again, I will go on record as saying I'm sure she's a very nice person. I wish her a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, health, and long life. Professionally, no. Get away from my comics, lady.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all pretty much in your camp there, and we'll end it there on a very spectacular agreement. As Jay said, he mentions Pamela Lyford on his very own podcast, The Comic Source, which you can find him on pretty much any audio subscription platform on the interwebs. Go check him out. Good guy. Years and years of experience doing this stuff, has numerous great connections. He has a couple really great things coming out for you for the 12 days of Comic Source. Is that what you're calling it?
78 episodes in 12 days.
He's been hustling for you guys. So if you're not going and giving him a look, yes, if you're not going and giving him a shot, please do. You're doing yourself a disservice if you don't. There's a link in the description to check him out. I think particularly on Spotify, I use that because that's the one that I listen to him on. But again, you can look up the Comic Source podcast anywhere podcasts are found. On that, Jace, is there anything in particular you'd like to plug to the people?
So I have some really great creator interviews coming for you guys. They're going to drop on Christmas Day. And I'm just giving interviews a chance to say thank you to our creators, I should say, a chance to say thank you to fans. Let's all kind of talk about the positives of 2020. And not only creators, but also other podcasts and comic book content creators are coming on to talk about, hey, let's forget about all the crap that's happened in 2020. Let's talk about the good things. So there's a couple of great interviews. I had a great talk with Tom King about some of his positives for 2020, and again, I know a lot of these people personally, so sometimes I can get answers that other people don't. So again, appreciate everybody coming and giving me a listen. I love comics. I just want to share that passion. So come and give it a try. And I'm very active on social media. Follow me on Twitter. Just do a search for the Comic Source. Instagram as well. I'm not as active there, but hit me up on Twitter if you have a question. Always happy to talk to listeners and hear what they have to say.
I enjoyed your I've been listening to your summaries of comic book stories from the classic Marvel and DC Christmas stories over the years. Yeah, so it was quite good. So you're with me when I shower.
Yeah, I've been covering a lot of holiday stories. They've been a lot of fun. I mean, some of them are kooky and crazy, but those holiday stories, just let's get into the spirit of the season for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely go give them a look. You'll also be hearing my dulcet tones on the Comic Source podcast very soon to talk about the HELIX project a little bit. If we haven't sold you on the book, because let's be quite frank, I think I'm pretty fucking bad at selling my own book, and that's a shame. So if anybody's going to draw it out of me, I think it's going to be Jace. He's a great interviewer. He brings the best out in the creators in the conversation. So give him a shot. Of course, this Canuck in the middle is always coming out with some of the most unique perspectives on comic books. Honestly, and I say this, no hyperbole, one of my favorite comic book YouTubers out there. You guys need to go show him some love. You need to get this man to 1,000 subscribers because he deserves it. And if you don't, I'm going to come to your house and I'm going to ask you to buy my comic book. And that's what I'm going to do. Okay. Yeah. So is there anything, Boom, that you want to let the folks know at home about that might be coming up on the channel?
I'm going to be doing a whole slew of different top 10 lists. I've actually stumbled upon something. I'm going to be doing something with top 10 lists, not just top 10 comics and top worst, but just top 10 all crazy things related to comic books. I'll be doing that over the season and having fun with that. And I haven't had a lot of unique perspectives on comic books lately because there's not a lot of unique things to say. Because I'm sounding like a broken record lately. I have been sounding more, I stopped doing it for a while because it was somewhat depressing. But in any event, holiday cheer. Everybody have a good time. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for having me on Dark Knight and Jace.
Yes, good times as always. Of course, I couldn't come back without getting two of my favorite collaborators on here to carry the conversation, because I'm never good at these comeback shows. So I thank you guys for watching, for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, subscribe to myself and Comic Boom on the YouTubes, subscribe to Jace anywhere podcasts and audio platforms are available to you. And if you haven't already, check out my comic book. If you want to know more about it, of course, stay tuned to Jason the Comic Source podcast, because you'll hear me hopefully not speak gibberish about it and say something at least moderately coherent. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. This was another great episode of Let's Talk Comics. Thank you to my collaborators. Thank you to you guys, and we'll catch you next time.